Chapter 1864, Another Discussion of Victory or Defeat. The Shantian clan could be considered an old clan of Alchemy City. They were not a noble clan of alchemists, but their clan's ancestor was a dividing soul tier elite, and was quite well known even in the third level. Yet now, they had actually suffered a setback in the first level. This naturally made them feel humiliated. If it were not for the sake of decreasing the pressure of the competition, Shantian Wu would not have possibly come deliberately to the first level to participate. And contrary to his expectations, he had not even managed to pass the first round. However, now that Ling Han had offended the Shantian clan, did he think he could pretend nothing had happened? If it were not for the fact that this was Alchemy City, Ling Han would have long since died 100 times over. Ling Han crooked a finger, and said, "Looks like you, too, want to be beaten." Ha ha ha. Shantianjiu laughed loudly, but there was not much humor to his laughter. It was completely a taunting laughter. "Do you think that I am the same kind of idiot as my younger brother?" Shantian Wu. However, the gap between the two brothers was indeed very wide. One was a prodigy, while the other was comparatively mediocre. One had long since advanced into the fourth severance, while the other had just barely advanced into even the severing mundane tier, and basically would not have any hope of advancing further than that. Thus, Shantianjiu had enough confidence to be proud. Ling Han wanted to make a move. Though the tournament was about to begin, suppressing this kind of character was only a matter of raising his hand for him. However, before he managed to, he saw a staff member run over, and say, "The tournament is about to begin, come quickly to draw your lot." With this interruption, Ling Han also dismissed the thought of making a move, and followed the other into the arena. "Brother!" Shantian Wu called out defiantly. Not only did this brother of his call him an idiot, he even allowed Ling Han to enter the arena. "Are you really my brother?" Yet Shantianjiu shook his head. Though the Shantian clan was very powerful, they were nothing compared to Grandmaster Zicheng. He did not dare to barge into the arena and wreak havoc. He humphed, and said, "We'll go in and take a look, and when he leaves, we can make our move. It won't be too late." Shantian Wu could only nod. In front of this overbearing brother, he could only be a yes-man. The two of them entered the arena, and began to watch the battles. The battles on the second day were no longer a battle royale, but an individual spar of 1 against 1. After all, 99% of the participants had been disqualified yesterday, and those that remained behind now were only about 1,000. They had to be fielded sparingly, or the battles would not last for the consecutive 9 days. After they had drawn lots, the contestants that had won yesterday were divided into 16 areas. Only one person could qualify for the next round from each area, and then they would have to win another 2 rounds before they could enter into the final rounds on the fourth level. Ling Han was allocated into the second area, and his first opponent's name was Tang Feng. He did not know the details of this opponent, nor did he take it to heart. For someone who was determined to become the ultimate champion, it did not matter what kind of opponent he encountered on his way. They would all be defeated in his hands. The battles in the 16 major areas began at the same time. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly end in one day. If everything was drawn out too long, it would seem tedious and boring. Some battles very soon ended. That was because a great many prodigies from other forces had come to the first level. There was no shortage of king tiers among them. Then, it was natural that they had ended their battles in an instant. But there were only king tiers here, but no emperor tiers. That was because emperor tiers would have to come from at least 4-star forces. If they had come here, they would have some privileges, and would not have to battle on the first level. There were incredibly drawn-out battles as well. Both sides would be locked in a furious exchange of blows, and from the look of things, it did not seem like the victory would be decided in a single day. Ling Han waited for a while, and then it was his turn. His opponent had also arrived on the stage. It was a young man whose features were sinister. He was dressed all in blue, with the symbol of a black cauldron woven into his robes. Tang Feng, the holy son of Black Cauldron Sect. Black Cauldron Sect? The 3-star force, Black Cauldron Sect? Hiss, it is said that Tang Feng has the aptitude of a king tier, and can suppress 100 elites of the same cultivation level all on his own? That has to be the case. Otherwise, how could he be considered a king tier? This Tang Feng had a big renown, and was recognized immediately by many. Perhaps he had also drawn the attention of many others as well. After all, he was a king tier, and was not someone that they could see at any other time easily. And in the eyes of the masses, Ling Han naturally became the background whose only purpose was to enhance his display of strength. On the spectators' seats, Shan Tianjiu also showed a smile, and murmured, "I never thought that this brat's first opponent would actually be Tang Feng. Then, there is definitely no chance for him to enter into the second round. Even if it was me, I would only have a 50% chance of winning against Tang Feng." He was definitely blowing his own trumpet. With his abilities, he would definitely be ending in defeat if he was matched with Tang Feng. Furthermore, it would be a horrible defeat. In fact, it could even be an instant defeat. Meanwhile, Shan Tianwu seemed very excited, and very much anticipated watching Ling Han be defeated. And then, he would make things worse for him, and give Ling Han a good thrashing so that he would suffer doubly both mental and physical pain. And in yesterday's positions, Cheng Fengyun and his group were seated in rows. That was because they had all bought through tickets, so it was practically made up of all the original members. "Young Master Cheng, what do you think would happen today?" Someone actually asked Cheng Fengyun to again provide a commentary, though it was not known whether he had done it deliberately or otherwise. With a schwa, all eyes in the surroundings were set on him. Being looked at by so many people, with Cheng Fengyun's vanity, he naturally would not be able to shirk the matter. He thought for a moment, and said, "Though Ling Han is indeed not weak, it is clear that Tang Feng is stronger. It should be known that those people yesterday had only been a mob who had an empty advantage in numbers, yet did not know how to work together, nor did they have any individual that was particularly strong. But it is a different story today. Those that have managed to emerge victorious from the battle royale yesterday can all be considered elites. And Tang Feng, you have heard it too. He is the holy son of Black Cauldron Sect, and is furthermore a king tier of the younger generation. I dare make the assertion that it would definitely be Tang Feng who would be victorious in this battle, and furthermore, it would be a crushing victory." If this prediction did not take Ling Han into consideration, that was really quite logical. A holy son that had come from a 3-star force might not be able to match an heir from a 4-star force, but the gap wouldn't be too wide either. Thus, everyone nodded repeatedly, expressing their agreement with Cheng Fengyun's opinion. However, Ling Han is really very strong. He only used a single move yesterday to defeat over 60 people. Perhaps he, too, is a king tier? Still, there were others that maintained a different opinion. "How about we play some stakes?" Someone was deliberately stoking the flames, and turned to look towards Cheng Fengyun. Cheng Fengyun's pride acted up, and he declared, "If Ling Han can still make a comeback in this battle, in fact, if he can hold on for only 100 moves, I will eat the chair under my behind." Great! Those who watched the excitement naturally did not mind the matter blowing up. The spectators all began cheering, seeming as if they were praising Cheng Fengyun. In truth, they were only forcing him into a corner so that there would be no way he could go back on his word. Cheng Fengyun was filled with confidence. Tang Feng's strength was definitely guaranteed. There was definitely no problem with his judgment. As for yesterday? That was because Shan Tianwu and his group were too weak. Everyone's interest intensified. At first, the victory of the battle between Ling Han and Tang Feng was no concern of theirs, but now that it involved a gamble, their feelings of anticipation soared instantly. Chapter 1865, it was still one move. Just forfeit. Tang Feng stated calmly, appearing to be indifferent. Ling Han chuckled, and said, I have never developed that habit. If you fight with me, you will only be seeking your own humiliation, Tang Feng continued, seeming very disdainful. He was the holy son of a 3-star great sect, and was actually compelled to be battled through multiple levels of selections, which made him feel very insulted. As he saw it, all his opponents should grovel beneath his feet, and respectfully deliver him all the way to the apex. Ling Han shook his head, and said, make your move. Tang Feng frowned, and showed a hint of displeasure. I have already repeatedly advised you, yet you still refuse to heed it. He said, if I did make a move, it would not just end in a horrible defeat for you. Oh, tell me about it, Ling Han said calmly. You will be crippled in my hands. Tang Feng humped, clearly angered. Ling Han really did not know what was good for him. In that case, Tang Feng would just have to make him suffer a bit. This was just right. He could use this person as an example for the rest, and there should be no other person that dared to fight him tomorrow. They would admit defeat the moment they saw him. Since he was asking for a beating, he would just have to beat him into submission. He stretched out a hand, and without using any celestial technique, he simply grabbed at Ling Han. However, he was a king tier of the younger generation, so this casual movement of stretching out his hand was filled with pressure, and endless stars surged in the palm of his hand. Even if they were sitting outside the arena, countless people felt their hearts suddenly clench as goosebumps rose all over their bodies. This strike was extremely devastating. As expected of a king tier, he was strong, so strong that others would be rendered speechless. The palm strike landed as a great star had fallen, possessing the might of destroying worlds. Yet Ling Han merely smiled faintly, and said, watch your feet. Pooh, a considerable number of people spluttered. They naturally were Cheng Fengyun and his group. They were incredibly familiar with this phrase. But the problem here was that yesterday, Ling Han's opponents were only a rowdy mob, but today? Tang Feng was a 4th Severance King tier, so how could the trash from yesterday compare with him? Could Ling Han create a miracle? Ah! Tang Feng suddenly released a sharp cry when this palm strike of his had descended. Ling Han lightly pushed it aside, and changed the course of attack, making it land on his own foot. Just how powerful was this strike? Boom! Even if the arena had been reinforced through formations, it still trembled strongly, and Tang Feng's whole left foot was crushed into mush. He looked at Ling Han in shock, his face looking like he had seen a ghost. He actually forgot about his pain, and was just staring at Ling Han in a daze. I already told you to watch your feet. Ling Han shook his head. Tang Feng's expression was bitter. With such an exchange, he already knew he was far from a match for Ling Han. He was indeed a king tier, but Ling Han was a king among kings. The gap of battle prowess between the two sides was overwhelmingly huge. I forfeit, Tang Feng said, but his face also regained some vigor. His opponent had to be an heir from a celestial king tier level force who had deliberately concealed his identity. It was not unjust that he had lost. On the spectators' seats, those that had watched this scene could not help but sigh. When it first started, Tang Feng could be said to be awe-inspiring, but when they had really fought, he was completely outmatched. Have you guys made some mistake? How could he be a king tier? That's right, that's right. Shouldn't a king tier be invincible among his peers? That person called Ling Han is only a 3rd Severance Peak stage, and is inferior to Tang Feng by a minor level, yet could defeat the latter with one move. When it comes to Tang Feng, he is a king tier of the present generation. Isn't that a joke? He must be someone having the same name. A great many people stubbornly thought that this Tang Feng was not the Tang Feng that they thought he was, but some bore stunned expressions. They were sure that this Tang Feng was the holy son of Black Cauldron sect. Ling Han. Just who exactly was he? How could he be so powerful? Brother. Shan Tianwu called out to his brother, his expression filled with doubt. He also belonged to the category of people that did not know Tang Feng, and seeing how Tang Feng had been defeated in a single move, he naturally felt extreme disdain. What kind of king tier is that, Pei? He had anticipated Ling Han's horrible defeat for so long, yet the result was the complete opposite. Pa! Shan Tianzhou delivered a slap right onto his younger brother's face. He had used so much force that the latter spat out a good number of teeth. Why did you hit me? Because he was already used to Shan Tianzhou's abuse of authority, Shan Tianwu actually did not look angry, and merely asked this question, very hurt. What did he do? He didn't do anything. Don't go and trifle with that guy again. Though Shan Tianzhou resented him for failing to meet his expectations, this idiot was still his younger brother. Why? Shan Tianwu's eyes widened. This person is very likely an heir of a celestial king tier-level great sect. Shan Tianzhou had no choice but to explain to prevent this idiotic brother of his from being stubborn and causing trouble again. If he talked about king tiers, emperor tiers, and monarch tiers with Shan Tianwu, he would not have any concept of it, but once he talked about a celestial king tier-level sect, he immediately understood. That was because he knew that the clans on the top two levels were existences that he definitely could not trifle with, and they were just immortal palace tier and ascending origin tier level forces. If it was a celestial king tier level, Shan Tianwu couldn't help but shiver. Actually, he was really just a profligate, and he was indeed very arrogant, but not stupid in the slightest. Brother, are you sure? He was still a bit unrelenting. Don't tell me that you think my judgment is worse than yours? Shan Tianzhou couldn't help but feel slightly annoyed. When has it been your right to doubt me? Only then did Shan Tianwu agree, no longer daring to say anything else. From now onwards, do not have any further involvements with him. Shan Tianzhou stared at Ling Han for a while, and closed his eyes. After today ended, he would bring his younger brother back to the third level. And on Cheng Fengyun's side, the atmosphere was extraordinarily peculiar. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Cheng Fengyun, and they felt that this guy was really a jinx. Yesterday, whoever he had a high opinion of would be unlucky and lose, and that was the case today as well. He was practically a god of bad luck. Ahem. Someone deliberately coughed, and looked towards Cheng Fengyun's bottom. Of course, he did not have any interest in Cheng Fengyun's A*S. He was just reminding the latter not to forget his previous bet. Cheng Fengyun's expression was livid, his hands gripping tightly the armrests of the stone chair, and his eyes were practically spitting fire. He really did not have the slightest grudge with Ling Han, but with Ling Han having slapped him twice in the face like this, he was really resenting him now. To recount, it was really baffling that Ling Han had gotten an enemy like this. He was also extremely innocent, but it indirectly proved that he indeed did have a halo of trouble, and could manage to attract trouble even in such a manner. I will eat it. Cheng Fengyun gritted his teeth, accepting his loss. He was a relatively fair gambler, but he had forgotten that others had not bet anything against him at all. Even if he had won, he would not have gained any benefits. Tang Feng left despondently, whilst Ling Han qualified for the next round. This caused many jaws to drop, and also caused Ling Han to truly gain the attention of many. Some people shone so brilliantly that no matter how hard they tried to hide it, their brightness would still show and stun the masses. When Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden left the arena, they couldn't help but feel slightly surprised because they actually did not see Shan Tianzhou and his brother. Strange. Didn't they say that they were going to deal with him? Where were they now? Ling Han naturally would not wait for them. He smiled, and strode off with the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They would fight another day. The two of them returned to their accommodations, yet saw a great many people had arrived. They represented different clans, all wanting to recruit Ling Han. Furthermore, it was not just limited to the forces of Alchemy City. There were also forces from outside the city. Chapter 1866, 10 Slaps. Even though a great many forces had offered generous conditions, Ling Han did not agree to any one of them. What a joke. Even if he had become a holy son, so what? All those gathered here were only 2-star forces and 3-star forces. Their influence was too limited. Only Alchemy City's range of influence was wide enough. Wasn't it said that at least 40% of all alchemical pills in the celestial realm came from Alchemy City? Then, they had more or less coverage of the whole eastern celestial realm. To become the young master of Alchemy City, one would at least have to be a heavyweight character. Then, it would be much easier for Commander Guan to find out where he was. Moreover, using this identity to traverse the boundless seas would have a higher level of safety. Of course, this would also bring a new problem: the Thundercloud Palace and Zai clan. They obviously would not spare Ling Han. Then, even if they were wary of Rock Palace, they would assassinate him secretly. After all, due to the celestial realm being so colossal, with innumerable elites, who would dare say that they were the culprits as long as there was no evidence? Perhaps they would think that this Ling Han was not that Ling Han. The true Ling Han had already gone to the western celestial realm, and this was only someone bearing the same name. After all, one was a prodigy of martial arts, yet had now suddenly become a prodigy of alchemy. This transformation was too drastic. How many people would actually believe the two were one and the same? Ling Han tactfully declined all the offers of recruitment. Some expressed pity, some asked Ling Han to reconsider, and some issued vague threats, and those Ling Han did not pay any attention to, and rebuffed them with cold words, throwing them out. In Alchemy City, even if they were dividing soul tiers, or immortal palace tiers, would they dare make a move on him? Maybe an ascending origin tier would. This was a great elite that could write their own rules. Of course, they, too, could play around outside the rules of the game, and who could control them? A night passed, and a new tournament day had come again. There was no way to describe Ling Han's luck. If you said that he was unlucky, he always managed to encounter such precious treasures like the heavenly Tao Jade and 9 Heavens Flame. To say nothing of celestial kings when they were young, they might not be able to get such treasures even now. But if you thought he was lucky, he would always encounter people like Luo Changfeng and Zai Bingyun too, which would lead to a series of events. This time was no exception. He had hopes of getting the Tao regulating pill, but the opponent he encountered today was another king tier. Even though this was a 4-star city, where there were countless prodigies, there were really not that many that had managed to reach the level of king tier. But Ling Han repeatedly encountered them. Just what kind of luck did he have? Today, his opponent was Yi Tianhe, the holy son of Crimson Rainbow Sect, a 3-star force. Young Master Cheng. Why don't you provide a commentary again today? Practically the same group from the day before yesterday and yesterday had appeared, and the spectators had again fixed their eyes on Cheng Fengyun. Battles progressed fiercely in the arena, and there was no shortage of excitement outside, either. Cheng Fengyun could be considered to have astonishing toughness. Yesterday, he had already eaten a stone chair, and had also paid for the damages because of it, yet he had come again today. It was unknown whether he really had a masochistic inclination by nature. Wrong, he wanted to rise from where he had fallen. He did not believe that Ling Han would be able to walk all the way to the end, and this was a firm dispute for him. Yi Tianhe is the holy son of Crimson Rainbow Sect. Furthermore, his bloodline is also extremely powerful. Even if he is not a divine fetus, he possesses strong special abilities, and his strength is superior to Tang Feng's, Cheng Fengyun said. In any case, he was not going to support Ling Han. Everyone only smiled slightly. You said the same thing yesterday, and what happened? Then does young Master Cheng still think that Ling Han would lose? Someone deliberately asked, wanting to force Cheng Fengyun to directly give a definite answer, and not this kind of assessment that was just focused on strength. Cheng Fengyun gritted his teeth, and said, "This time, Ling Han will definitely lose. Young Master Cheng, why don't we make another wager?" There would always be people who wanted nothing more than for the world to be in chaos. Cheng Fengyun glared harshly at that person. What fuck wager? If he won, he would not gain any profits. He had really been too careless yesterday. Today, he was not going to make the same mistake. I bet that Ling Han will win. A very melodious female voice rang out, and a woman with a voluptuous figure walked over. Do you dare accept the bet? She looked at Cheng Fengyun. This naturally was the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Yesterday, she had already taken notice of the happenings over here, and discovered that Cheng Fengyun was still determined to pester her husband today, so she was naturally furious. Cheng Fengyun's heart rippled. There were not many exquisite beauties as beautiful as the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. They would either be hidden from the world, or marry the young masters of noble clans, and there was no hope for him at all. Fine, what should we bet? His fighting spirit instantly rose. If I win, you will slap yourself 10 times, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. An angry expression flashed over Cheng Fengyun's face. A mere Genesis tear, and she dared to challenge him? Do you think that just because you are a little beautiful, you can be completely unreserved? He humphed, and said, if I win, I will slap you 10 times. He would first slap her until she knew the pain, and then he would softly knead with the next few strikes so he could take a little advantage of her. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was displeased. She knew what kind of ideas the other party had. However, what they were betting were 10 slaps, and from this aspect, the other party had not gone overboard. Thus, she nodded, and said, all right. She was naturally filled with confidence in Ling Han. To say nothing of the fact that it was only a king tier, even if it was an emperor tier, Ling Han had already killed 2. The spectators were naturally even more excited. A wager added with a beautiful woman, they instantly became more exhilarated. In the arena, Yi Tianhe strode into the ring of battle. He wore a silvery white tight-fitting suit, enhancing the slenderness of his figure. His features were also incredibly handsome, enough to incite envy from others. His natural talent in martial arts was already so high, and he was still so indescribably handsome at that. How were others supposed to live? He looked at Ling Han, and after a while, he said, I watched you fight yesterday. How was it? Ling Han asked, smiling. You're very strong. Yi Tianhe nodded somberly. However, I have never had the habit of retreating without a battle. Fighting with an elite like you may compel me to become even stronger. Ling Han still smiled. He did not say that fighting with someone like him actually did not bring him the slightest benefit. Furthermore, the other party had not offended him, so he would not get any pleasure from stepping on him. Then he should just quickly do away with him. Perhaps, when he went to the 4th level, there would be stronger opponents appearing, and he, too, wanted to take a look. I hope you will not disappoint me, Yi Tianhe said. He began to gather power. Boom, a mighty river surged from the top of his head, soaring straight into the skies. The sounds of water thundered loudly, resembling the appearance of great Tao. I am master of the divine river. Yi Tianhe declared loudly a few breaths later. His whole person was wrapped in regulations of water, while his feet were stepping on the river as he soared in midair. It was like he had turned into a river god. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, come. Charge. A 3-pronged halberd appeared in Yi Tianhe's hands. It was manifested through regulations of water. He held it with both hands, and the water under his feet surged, bringing him in a rapid dash towards Ling Han. Then, he stretched out the halberd in a stab. Boom, the waters rolled out, all turning into the force behind this strike, and surging towards Ling Han in an astonishingly frightening way. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and grabbed out at the three-pronged halberd. "How dare you?" Yi Tianhe roared angrily. "To actually look down on me so far, you are too arrogant. Then you must pay the price." The river underneath his feet turned into two clear beasts of jade water, and as their hooves galloped, their speed became faster and faster. The halberd's blade pierced out rapidly. It was formed from regulations, and had endless destructive power. Ling Han only acted like he had not seen it. His right hand descended, and he grabbed the three-pronged halberd. "Explode!" Yi Tianhe shouted loudly. The regulations of water burst, wanting to shatter Ling Han's hand forcefully through the explosive impact. Ling Han smiled slightly. Boom, he began to unleash flames that flickered and danced through the whole sky. Chapter 1867, The Tragic Cheng Fengyun. Water and fire were completely incompatible. Although water overcame fire among the five elements, this was not an absolutely restrictive relation. Instead, both were the weakness of the other. While water did overcome fire, fire could also overcome water, and it would depend on which was the stronger. Yi Tianhe was very extraordinary. He was not a divine fetus, but possessed a little battle prowess ability which allowed him to unleash battle prowess that was inferior only to divine fetus. This was also why he was even stronger than Tang Feng. Unfortunately, Ling Han presently was a true divine fetus. Moreover, Nine Heavens' flame was stronger than a divine fetus. Divine fetus could only draw on some celestial king tier level power, but Nine Heavens' flame was a celestial king tier level existence itself, and was naturally even stronger than a divine fetus. Ling Han did not even have to use the Nine Heavens' flame. He only had to release his power of divine fetus, and the flames took the form of multiple seals, rising in resistance against the water element Great Tao. If it was a real clash of the two Great Tao of water and fire, there would actually be no difference in power. After advancing to Celestial King tier, regulations did not differ in strength. However, both Ling Han and Yi Tianhe were only in the Severing Mundane tier, so the gap was still huge. As the flames blazed fiercely, steam rose, and then there was no longer any river that soared skywards. Visibly, this divine river was drying up, as if it had encountered a great drought that would happen once in a century. In an instant, it had completely evaporated. Yi Tianhe's appearance had also changed greatly. At first, he looked elegant and handsome, yet now he was all skin and bones, as if all the liquid in his body had been evaporated as well. He was not much different from a dried corpse. On the spectators' seats, everyone was speechless. Who would have imagined that what should have been a fierce battle would actually end so quickly? Yesterday, Ling Han had defeated Tang Feng with a single move. And today? He had similarly defeated Yi Tianhe with a single move. To say nothing of the fact that no one had defeated Ling Han, even the question of exactly how strong he was could not be guessed at. Just who exactly was this Ling Han? Cheng Fengyun's face muscles twitched. Though the battle had yet to be decided, he already knew that he had lost. Fuck. He was cursing in his heart. How could there be someone so strong? Or rather, how could such a strong person possibly appear in the first level? If you were the heir of a celestial king tier level sect, then an exception would have been made for you, and you would have been led to the fourth level no matter what. Have you deliberately come to cause me trouble? I admit defeat. Yi Tianhe declared in a trembling voice. If he did not forfeit now, the seals of Great Tao in his body would be burnt by the divine flames, and his cultivation level would retreat 1,000 miles. Ling Han released his grip, and took a few steps back. Smiling, he said, "You let me win." Yi Tianhe's figure shook. The source power flickered slightly, and his body immediately filled out. In the first place, he had not sustained any major injuries. As long as his life force was not damaged, it would not have much effect on a cultivator. He regained his handsome appearance, and cast a deep look on Ling Han. Then, he said, "Brother Ling, let me first wish you that you will be invincible and gain the final victory. However, I heard that Zhao Qingfeng has come. This person. I have seen him move in an ancient site before. He is indescribably strong. I only managed to escape out of luck." Zhao Qingfeng again. It was already not Ling Han's first time hearing this name. Previously, it was only from an investigator who had not even entered the severing mundane tier. He could think that it was the latter who was simply amazed because of his lack of experience, but Yi Tianhe was a king tier, and even he was so wary, which showed that Zhao Qingfeng was indeed extraordinarily strong. "I will take note." He smiled. "No, Brother Ling," Yi Tianhe said seriously. "Zhao Qingfeng's strength has exceeded the range of Emperor tier. I estimate that even if he hasn't advanced into the Monarch tier, he would not be too far off, either." Only now did Ling Han seriously take this matter to heart. Monarch tier. However, without advancing into the fifth severance, no matter how strong the prodigy was, he would not be qualified to be called a monarch tier. He could only be considered an excellent figure among emperor tiers. For example, like Ling Han. Only if he had succeeded in the fifth severance could he have the right to call himself a monarch tier. He did not believe that Zhao Qingfeng had achieved the fifth severance. Otherwise, there would be no need for him to even fight. He should just directly admit defeat. The gap between fourth severance and fifth severance was like the gap between the severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier. That was a qualitative difference. Furthermore, Zhao Qingfeng's favorite hobby is killing prodigies. Yi Tianhe grimaced, and said, "I did not die, not because Zhao Qingfeng has become kind, but rather because he does not even deign to kill those who are mediocre." In Zhao Qingfeng's eyes, king tiers were actually just mediocre. Ling Han nodded, and said, "All right, I will keep that in mind." Yi Tianhe also nodded, turned, and left. His figure was a little despondent. After all, in a battle of equals, and a battle between a fourth severance and a third severance at that, he had lost completely. This had seriously struck a blow on his pride. On the spectator seats, Cheng Fengyun's expression was livid. At this moment, he really wanted to rush down and beat Yi Tianhe up. "You fuck call yourself a king tier? Rubbish, absolute nonsense." "Slap then," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said calmly. When it came to gambling, Cheng Fengyun's character was quite fair. He gritted his teeth, and began to deliver slaps on his own face. This battle naturally caused Ling Han's rising reputation to become even louder, and also drew even more forces to recruit him, but just like yesterday, Ling Han did not bother to give them any regard. On the fourth day, the fifth day, Ling Han had encountered king tiers. The participants were becoming fewer and fewer, and the chances for encountering elites were naturally higher and higher, but encountering Ling Han was actually the greatest misfortune for the other contestants. He progressed triumphantly, and charged all the way to the top 16. He only had to win another 2 rounds, and he would be able to advance into the 4th level, and fight in the final rounds. On the 9th day, Ling Han's opponent was Bewitching Maiden Ro. In this battle, Ling Han will definitely lose. Cheng Fengyun, who had been silent for a few days, became lively again. In the last few days, he had kept his silence. Even if others asked him to provide a commentary, he would only laugh drily. He was not an idiot. Even Tang Feng and Yi Tianhe were no match for Ling Han. If he continued to insist, that would really be asking for punishment. But this time was different. That was because Ling Han's opponent was Bewitching Maiden Ro. Fairy Ro is the holy daughter of the Purity sect, and not only is she as beautiful as a celestial maiden, and as alluring as a peach, she has also cultivated the techniques of the Purity sect. To say nothing of men, even women would not be able to resist a slight smile from her. Cheng Fengyun regained the confidence that he had had at the beginning, and passed his judgment. He had never been one to fear suffering. And for men, the charm techniques of the purity sect naturally have even more powerful destructive ability. Faced against one known as the greatest prodigy that would never appear in millions and millions of years in the purity sect, how could Ling Han win? Everyone in the area did not make a sound, and silently watched as he chattered on and on. After a good while, someone asked, "Why don't we have another gamble?" This time, Cheng Fengyun's self-confidence was really off the charts. He took the initiative to say, "If Ling Han can still win, I will dance naked here." To even say such words, it showed how certain he was of his win. The heavier the bet, the more proof it was of his confidence, and the smoother this comeback of his would be. All right, young Master Cheng is indeed heroic. A good few people cheered. Whether it was really praise for Cheng Fengyun was unknown, though. In the arena, bewitching Maiden Ro walked delicately over, her pretty face still as beautiful as a celestial maiden's, exuding a seduction that would bewitch the soul. As her slender waist swayed, her hips pulled, causing anyone's heart to melt. However, her brows were wrinkled in a frown, and she sighed softly, and said, "Why have I encountered a monster like you? 2 rounds later at least would have been better." She was really depressed. "Haven't you gone off to the Rock Palace? Why have you come to contest for the Tao-regulating pill here then?" "I forfeit." She directly gave up without even a fight. "Pooh." Cheng Fengyun instantly spluttered, a colorful expression on his face. "Fuck." Chapter 1868, Victory. Cheng Fengyun's mouth gaped open, big enough to fit an egg. "What the fuck? Aren't you the holy daughter of the purity sect? Aren't you the supreme calamity that would only appear once in millions and millions of years? Fuck, you actually admit defeat directly without even fighting. Judge, I want to make a report, there's something fishy going on here." Even if Cheng Fengyun's mental activity was incredibly high, he could not say a single word. What could he say? The tournament rules did not say that taking the initiative to admit defeat was disallowed. How could it be that he could force bewitching Maiden Ro to fight with Ling Han? Running naked, he would have to run naked. He felt his vision darken. Whether it was eating stone, or slapping himself, he could accept all of that. But to run naked, and be completely bared to the public eye, this was really something that he could not accept. But the problem was that these words were a boast that he had personally made. Just see, he had brought evil onto himself, hadn't he? His eyes wandered, and saw that every person in his vicinity was looking at him smilingly. "I will take it off," he announced loudly. Young Master Cheng's character was definitely good regarding gambling. After exiting the arena, bewitching Maiden Ro set off in pursuit. "Brother Ling, why didn't you go to Rock Palace?" This bewitching maiden was extremely alluring. She was clearly speaking about something serious, but gave off the feeling as if she was lying on the bed and whispering soft words, immediately inciting dangerous thoughts. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden instantly became alert. She was not the empress who had the confidence to look down on the whole world. She was only a little woman, and definitely did not hope that Ling Han would find other women. Thus, she maintained a strong dislike towards bewitching Maiden Ro, and did not hope that she was too close with Ling Han. Ling Han smiled. It's hard to explain. He did not want to speak of his own misfortunes, how he would encounter 2 great elites exchanging blows when he had been on his way, and was innocently implicated, and had the black murderous curse planted in him by old demon Blood Shadow. Oh! Bewitching Maiden Ro was a little displeased. "Why are you always so cool towards me? Did I offend you? Damn man, so despicable." She was cursing in her heart, but the smile on her face became even sweeter and more alluring. The techniques of the purity sect were like this. The crueler and fiercer you were towards me, the more beautifully I would still smile. Otherwise, this technique could not be unleashed. Unfortunately, this kind of charm technique did not have the slightest effect on Ling Han. He waved a hand, and strode off. Bewitching Maiden Ro could only stomp her feet in rage. It was the first time she had encountered a man that completely did not fall for her charms, and she was completely helpless. A day later, Ling Han was matched with the last opponent of the first level, a man called Shu. He had no surname. However, that might not be his name, but only a code name. This man looked very ordinary, and his journey all the way here had been bumpy as well. He had only narrowly won over every opponent, but the crux of the matter was that no matter how strong his opponent would be, he would always manage to win. Ling Han stood facing him. Shu did not have a tall build, and had average looks, belonging to that category that would definitely not attract any notice in a crowd. Furthermore, there was not the slightest sliver of aura that escaped from him. He really was like a completely ordinary person. Merely in this aspect, he was already not ordinary. Being able to control the aura in his body such that not a bit would seep out like this was the display of the strongest. Young Master Cheng, on the spectators' seats, everyone once again looked towards Cheng Fengyun. One could not help but be impressed by this person. He had eaten stone, slapped himself, and run naked in public, but he actually still managed to arrive on time. There was really no one that could compare to his toughness. Cheng Fengyun shook his head repeatedly. Today, he was not going to give a commentary even if it killed him. I will only be a quiet, handsome guy today. Everyone couldn't help but feel disappointed. Their enjoyment had decreased a bit. In the arena, Ling Han made a gesture of invitation and said, "Make your move." He did not take his opponent lightly. Being able to charge all the way into the top 8, there would definitely not be any weaklings. Perhaps he was like him, too incredibly powerful. Shu set his eyes on Ling Han, and bared his mouth in a grin. However, this grin was terrifying. He actually didn't have any teeth nor a tongue. There was actually a dead man's face in his mouth, smiling eerily at Ling Han. Even if Ling Han was extremely brave, he couldn't help but feel his heart tremble, and a coldness rose up in him. Right at this moment, Shu's figure flashed, and he had already charged towards Ling Han. His right hand was raised, holding a thin sword. This was really a thin sword, not much wider than a hair. As cold light flashed, "Xiao, Xiao, Xiao, Xiao," he pierced out at Ling Han. His speed was really too high. In an instant, he had already delivered countless stabs. It clearly was only a thin sword, but because it was too fast, it seemed as if blades were raining down. The air itself was forcibly pierced through as power of regulation flailed. So powerful. Cheng Fengyun was dumbfounded, and immediately felt incredible regret. Fuck. Why didn't he make a bet today? He could have won. He really wanted to stomp his feet in fury. He had already been stifled for a good few days, and even in his dreams he wanted to see Ling Han lose, and then pass judgment to release the gloomy feelings in his heart. But when the chance came, he had actually missed it. Everyone was also dazzled by the scene. Who would believe that an average-looking person would actually burst out with this kind of battle prowess? Ling Han actually didn't have the slightest ability to counter in front of this opponent. However, Shu did not look the slightest bit proud. Others might not know, but he was very clear. Ling Han seemed to have sustained innumerable stabs, but not a single blade had truly stabbed into Ling Han's body. The latter was truly strong, having the power of regulation to defend himself. It was like great Tao had wrapped around him. No matter how he attacked, it was completely ineffective. Right at this moment, Ling Han suddenly moved, and looked towards him. Shu couldn't help but feel his heart freeze. He hurriedly bounced back, and retreated. The feeling this opponent gave him was like he was looking at a tall mountain. If it did not move, you could be a little willful, but the moment it countered, then the earth would crack, mountains would collapse, and seas overturn. Ling Han broke into a grin, and said, "Not too bad. Among the opponents that I have encountered these days, you can be ranked at the top." This person had battle prowess close to Emperor tier. Even if he had met the likes of Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng, he would be able to exchange 1 or 2 blows. Too bad, the person he encountered was him. Ling Han moved, and his 5 fingers stretched out, pressing out at Shu. The palm had not landed, but the aura was already like a heavy mountain, exerting so much pressure that Shu sweated like mad. He felt completely scared out of his wits, and wanted to dodge, but it was as if lead had been poured into his legs. He couldn't move at all. However, he was an existence that was close to Emperor tier, after all. Shu gave a battle cry and struggled free of the pressure Ling Han exerted on his spirit, once again brandishing his sword in attack. Even if he was defeated, he wanted to be defeated in battle. Boom! In this clash of 2 strikes, Shu was sent flying outwards, and fell onto the ground, no longer being able to get back up. On the spectators' seats, it was once again dead silence. Everyone had initially thought Ling Han would definitely lose, but had never imagined that they would have barely even finished the thought when Ling Han would have already turned the tables around and won. This turn of events had really happened too quickly. Meanwhile, Cheng Fengyun secretly marveled at his luck and felt lingering fear. Thankfully, he hadn't made a bet today. Otherwise, he had best wait until they were at the 4th level so the freaks there could deal with Ling Han. After this day ended, the 4 strongest from the 1st level had all been determined, and they were Ling Han, Zhang Quan, Hiyu, and Yang Biue. Aside from Ling Han, the other 3 were all heirs of 3-star forces, having the aptitude of King tier. Otherwise, they couldn't have possibly emerged victorious from this kind of fierce competition. They did not return to their original accommodations, but had rather been gathered together. They would immediately go to the 4th level, and the contest for the final rounds would begin the very next day. Ling Han was also very expectant. There were even better time cultivation chambers on the 4th level. He wanted to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills as soon as possible. Once he succeeded, he could use this as a stepping stone, and open the doors to the interior of Alchemy City. Chapter 1869, Arrogance Without Bounds. Ling Han and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden went to the 4th level via the transfer formation. As the victors of the tournament, the 4 still had some slight privileges. They were allowed to bring 1 or 2 people with them into the 4th level, but it was only limited to the tournament period. After it ended, they would have to leave within 3 days. Those who wanted to watch the tournament did not have that good luck. They could only pay to travel through the transfer formation. Not going to use it? With how colossal the space was in every level, would you manage to arrive in time if you ran? This transfer formation charged a star stone for each trip, and furthermore, it could not stop at the 4th level. You would have to return on the same day that you had come. Back and forth, that would be 2 star stones. It was rumored that Alchemist Zicheng also had a share in the transfer formation. He really had a good business acumen. After arriving on the 4th level, Ling Han and his group had their accommodations arranged. At most, they could only stay here for 3 days. Additionally, the victors from the 2nd and 3rd levels would also be staying here. They were basically the natives of the city, and would directly return once they had finished the tournament. Meanwhile, the victors of the 4th level were not here. They would only appear on the next day. However, when it was midnight, a frightening aura rolled out, causing the 12 people who had qualified for the next round in this courtyard to wake and become alert. So powerful. They all opened their doors and exited, and saw that there was a man standing proudly in the skies. He was like a divine god, exuding an aura that ruled supreme over the whole world. Zh Xiao Qingfeng. Someone recognized this person, and called out his name, but his voice was actually trembling. Being able to qualify for the final rounds which of them were not king tiers? But to actually tremble all over just by speaking a name, that showed how vicious Zhao Qingfeng was, and how frighteningly strong he was. Zhao Qingfeng. Clearly, there were a considerable number that had heard his name before. The other king tiers all frowned, looking wary. It was rumored that not only was Zhao Qingfeng overwhelmingly strong, he also had a cruel nature, and had a fondness for killing prodigies. One should pray not to become the target of his attention, or he would have to pray for good fortune after he left Alchemy City. Zhao Qingfeng clasped his hands behind his back, looking down on everyone from his lofty position, strong contempt in his eyes. A bunch of trash, really rubbish, not even capable of making me interested in making a move. Everyone couldn't help but feel furious. Which one of them was not a king tier? There were one or two in fact that were so strong that they had reached the level of emperor tier, and you actually said that they were trash and rubbish? Who could tolerate that? Dissatisfied? Zhao Qingfeng scoffed, stretched out a hand, and pressed down. Xiao, 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 xiao. Innumerable green rays of light shot down from the skies. Those were multiple green swords, and they were all formed from seals of great Tao, filling the skies in their descent. Wang, it was as if the great Tao itself was suppressing them, which was astonishingly frightening. Everyone hurriedly moved to parry the incoming attack. Pang, pang, pang. The whole courtyard was practically obliterated in an instant, and when the clouds of dust dispersed, the majority of people were lying on the ground. Even if there were a few that had not lain down, they still bore some injuries. A casual move, but it was capable of wounding over a dozen king tiers, and even emperor tiers, with a single strike. Just what kind of terrifying strength was this? This was Zhao Qingfeng. What was more frightening was that he was clearly already so strong, yet was still one of the 4 heavenly kings under Yan Xianlu, and Yan Xianlu, he was not even the heir of a 9-heaven celestial king tier. I already said that you were trash. Zhao Qingfeng scoffed. I came this time just to tell you all not to waste my time. Tomorrow, there will only be one tournament battle. His eyes were set on the only person who was still standing and unwounded in the area. Ling Han. Ling Han had already drawn Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden into the Black Tower. Ling Han? Zhao Qingfeng asked calmly, 2 balls of fire erupting in his eyes. That was a blazing fighting spirit. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The other party actually knew his name? He also looked back at him. Though he was looking upwards, he had a certain pride about his posture, and was not at the slightest bit of advantage in terms of aura. That's right. I am Ling Han, he stated evenly. This Zhao Qingfeng was really very strong. Perhaps he was even stronger than Ling Han had been before he had been tempered by the celestial king tier flames. But now, Ling Han had absolute confidence in himself. Ling Han did not dare underestimate any prodigy in this world, but he similarly would still have absolute confidence in himself. Zhao Qingfeng bared his teeth in a grin, and declared, "You are very interesting. Tomorrow will be the finals between you and me." Was this reasonable? There were a total of 16 people who had qualified for the final rounds, and 8 would win, then 4 out of that, and then the last 2 would remain. Only then would the final battle be held, and now he had directly skipped over 3 days of battles. Wasn't he afraid that Alchemist Zicheng would seek him out for an accounting? Though Ling Han had never met this alchemist before, he was already capable of saying for certain that he was definitely an old money grubber. Let's talk about this later, Ling Han said carelessly. Whether it was fighting slowly all the way to the finals, or immediately beginning the battle, he was unafraid. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes swept over him, and he said, "If you people do not automatically forfeit tomorrow, then none of you need even dream of returning alive. Whatever I, Zhao Qingfeng, have said, I promise it will be done." He was arrogant enough, domineering enough, and haughty enough, but he had enough strength too. Everyone was silent. At first, some people had had some hope, but just now, they had been defeated with a single move from Zhao Qingfeng, which naturally was a blow strong enough to destroy all their confidence. In any case, they couldn't possibly win, so what did it matter if they retreated earlier or later? That was Zhao Qingfeng, and they could not afford to trifle with him. The unluckier one was Ling Han. He had become Zhao Qingfeng's target, and he would definitely be killed tomorrow. Ling Han, I anticipate the battle tomorrow. You definitely must not disappoint me, or else. Zhao Qingfeng only looked deeply at Ling Han before leaving with a flutter of his sleeve. This arrogance of his had reached a completely different level. Ling Han propped up his chin and reflected on himself. Had he been too modest? You see, Zhao Qingfeng was only the subordinate of a holy son, yet could actually be arrogant to this extent in Alchemy City. Tomorrow, he was going to crush this guy. Ling Han made his decision. Who cared how freakish a prodigy Yan Xianlu was? That was something to be considered later. Now he very much disliked the look of Zhao Qingfeng, and if he did not crush him, irritation would continue to be stifled in his heart. The courtyard was razed to the ground. However, the other 15 people had no plans to continue the tournament, so they were not so concerned. Some immediately left, while others were still not willing to give up, and placed their bets on Ling Han. They hoped to see Ling Han make a great comeback, and suppress Zhao Qingfeng. Ultimately, this night had still passed. Early in the morning of the second day, Ling Han and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden set out, heading to the arena here. It was very close. What, all the other contestants have forfeited, and now only 2 are left. In the arena, one of the persons in charge couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat as he listened to the report from his subordinate. The tickets had already been sold, yet such a problem had actually cropped up now. Zhao Qingfeng, he exclaimed through gritted teeth. Would you die if you fought a few more rounds? To actually threaten the other contestants so that they would take their own initiative to forfeit. Thankfully, there was at least one that had stayed behind. Otherwise, after working hard for 10 days to half a month, the finals would have actually fizzled out. That would really be too much of a joke. It can't be helped, we can only directly follow up with the finals, this person in charge said with a sigh. Though Zhao Qingfeng was despicable, who would dare to directly reprimand him? As he was a person that had walked out from an 8th heaven celestial king tier level force, even a finger of his was incredibly precious. Moreover, he was also Yan Xianlu's follower, and as the saying went, when one beat a dog, one had to answer to its master. That was a supreme genius that would definitely become a celestial king. Who dared to offend him? I hope that this Ling Han is not disappointing, and will teach Zhao Qingfeng a good lesson, this person in charge exclaimed, but then he shook his head. This was an impossible feat. Even the holy sons of celestial king tier level sects had all been easily defeated by Zhao Qingfeng, so how could Ling Han possibly defy the heavens? Chapter 1870, Final Battle. On the spectators' seats, when the Master of Ceremonies announced that the final battle would directly begin today, the whole martial arena instantly erupted in a storm of protest. What the heck was this? It had been agreed that they would be able to watch for 4 days consecutively, so why had it been shortened to a single day? You guys had just decided the winner behind closed doors, right? The others fought earnestly all the way here, and in the end, they were disqualified for no reason? But the Master of Ceremonies also said that the other contestants had all forfeited on their own initiative, and they could not force them to fight, after all, right? Thus, whether you were in agreement or otherwise, you would have to accept this result. There would only be one battle, and that was Ling Han against Zhao Qingfeng. Ling Han? Lu Xianming murmured. Could it be that it was that person? It couldn't be so coincidental, right? Young Master Lu. Sun Dong approached. What is it? Lu Xianming shook his head, and thought that they were only two people who shared the same name. After all, there were really too many people in the celestial realm, so it was not unusual for two people to share the same name. Meanwhile, Sun Dong was almost prostrating himself in admiration of Zhao Qingfeng. He said that he would directly fight the final battle, and he was really going to fight the final battle. All the others had been scared into flight. He was really too domineering. In this battle against Ling Han, that damn guy would definitely be crushed into dust by Zhao Qingfeng. After waiting for so many days, the moment for his revenge had finally come. On the other side, Cheng Fengyun also had a feeling of exultation. Today, Ling Han was definitely going to be defeated. Initially, it was still possible for Ling Han to stay a few more days on this stage, but today is the final battle, and he is facing Zhao Qingfeng directly, then that would mean undoubted defeat. He spoke frankly with assurance, as if he was Zhao Qingfeng himself. However, there was no one stoking the fires today, because everyone had heard about Zhao Qingfeng's past deeds. Just some time ago, he had directly forced a few holy sons and holy daughter from several celestial king tier-level sects to leave, and 3 of the victors of the 4th level had also forfeited. That was all because they were wary of Zhao Qingfeng. This person was so strong that he had reached the level of destroying worlds. No matter how strong Ling Han was, he could only lose in resentment faced with Zhao Qingfeng. The only question here was exactly how many moves Ling Han could survive. 3, 5, 10. And he still dared to fight. His courage was really admirable. After the Master of Ceremonies blabbered for a while, this final battle that was much anticipated yet taking place ahead of time was finally going to begin. The 2 contestants came on stage. Suddenly, an expression of shock appeared on Lu Xianming's face. He had seen Ling Han. Fuck, it really was this guy. He couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. This world was really too small, wasn't it? Not even a year had passed, and he had met Ling Han again. No. Lu Xianming immediately thought in his heart. He could not allow Ling Han to die at Zhao Qingfeng's hands. Firstly, he still owed his life to the former, and secondly, Ling Han's strength was very powerful, and he needed this kind of helper. He would step out to stop the battle after Ling Han was defeated. With his identity, Zhao Qingfeng would have to give him some face. In this manner, he would repay Ling Han's kindness, and could take advantage of the chance to recruit him too. What a great idea. Sun Dong did not notice the changing expressions on Lu Xianming's face. After he saw Ling Han, his whole head was filled with the tragic scene of having his A*S pierced, and he wanted nothing more than to devour Ling Han's flesh and drink his blood. Begin. The Master of Ceremonies waved a hand, and left the stage to these 2 young prodigies. Zhao Qingfeng stood, clasping his hands behind his back. He set his eyes on Ling Han, and said, "Not bad. At least you have some courage. I thought you would be a coward as well." Ling Han chuckled, and said, "If I left, who would beat you to mush? Your courage is something to be praised. I hope your strength will not disappoint me." Zhao Qingfeng was not angered, but instead laughed. His only fear was that Ling Han was not strong enough, and could not give him a strong enough stimulation, arousing all his potential. The longer he stayed at the 4th severance, the lower the chances were for breaking through to the 5th severance. The accumulation of power over time was of no use at all. Instead, it would only cause a contrary effect. Ling Han said, "I, too, hope that you are strong. Otherwise, stepping on a weakling would be something very boring. Arrogant, but there is no meaning to it." Zhao Qingfeng raised his right hand, and a green halo of light appeared in the palm of his hand. Then, a green sword appeared within the green halo, and he gripped it in his hand. Zhao Qingfeng showed a cruel expression. For this feast, he had already waited for a very long time, and now he was impatient to finally enjoy it. Cruelly killing a prodigy that was close to his equal would endlessly arouse his Tao heart. That was right, he had cultivated the regulation of slaughter. Of all the kings in the world, Qingfeng is the strongest. Zhao Qingfeng stated calmly, an indescribable pride clear in his tone. Ling Han was surprised. This guy was really shameless. Of all the kings in the world, you actually dared to call yourself the strongest. Where had you gotten such courage from? It should be known that even Yan Xianlu did not have the right to call himself the strongest, what more you? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh out loud, and shook his head. You actually dare laugh at me? Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly, and the green blade in his hand rose, striking out at the empty air in front of Ling Han. Shua, a flash of sword chi swept out, turning into a sword that was 30,000 meters long, and slashing harshly at Ling Han. He was arrogant, but he was indeed strong. This strike had gathered supreme great Tao, as if it could slice open the heavens and earth. As expected of a prodigy from the Eternal Prosperity sect. On the spectators' seats, a few powerful figures were watching the battle. They were all ascending origin tier elites, the strongest beneath celestial king tier. In their eyes, to say nothing of Zhao Qingfeng and Ling Han, even if Yan Xianlu had come, he would only be a child. No matter how strong your potential was, that was a matter of the future. How could a severing mundane tier possibly gain the serious notice of ascending origin tiers? His battle prowess is indeed strong enough. The powerful figures made their assessment. This brat has already cultivated the severing mundane tier to perfection. I do not believe that he is incapable of breaking through to the dividing soul tier with his talent. Unless. These powerful figures all exchanged looks, and could see a sliver of shock in each other's eyes. They had thought of a legend. It really was just a legend. At least, they had never heard of anyone who had successfully accomplished it. Above the fourth severance, there was still the fifth severance. Whichever celestial king tier sect this boy went to, he would be qualified to become a holy son. However, he still chose to become Yan Xianlu's follower. Perhaps it is also for the sake of completing the fifth severance. These powerful figures were all guessing, and a hint of admiration appeared in their expressions. Even they were slightly stunned by Zhao Qingfeng's resolve. However, with this, old Zicheng would definitely be stomping his feet in fury after causing him to earn a lot less profit for no reason, a shorty that had his hair tied in countless braids suddenly said with a laugh. Ha ha ha. The other powerful figures all laughed loudly. Thinking of that money-grubber look of Alchemist Zicheng, they really anticipated the expression he would have on his face when he heard of the news. Amidst the laughter of these mighty figures, this flash of sword chi Zhao Qingfeng had shot out blasted towards Ling Han. Ling Han shot out a fist. Peng, the regulations of fire entwined around his fist, and his punch landed on the sword chi. The sword chi crumbled instantly. However, Ling Han was also forced into a retreat by the shock wave caused by this clash, all the way until he had reached the boundary of the arena, and then his retreat was stopped by the wall behind him. With a bang, he had crashed so hard into the wall that it shook. What a frightening strike. It was only a careless wave, and it already possessed such might. Ling Han frowned slightly. He was not inferior to his opponent in talent, but because there was a gap of a minor level between them, with third severance against fourth severance, and added with the fact that Zhao Qingfeng was also close to monarch tier level, he had fallen into a disadvantage. This is fun. Let's battle, then. Chapter 1871, You have disappointed me too much. Ling Han released a battle cry, and stepped strongly with his feet. Peng, his whole person instantly shot out like a sharp arrow, charging back over to Zhao Qingfeng. Physical power added with origin power was unleashed through regulations of lightning, and Ling Han's speed was indescribably fast. He raised his fist, and harshly threw a punch at Zhao Qingfeng. Zhao Qingfeng was slightly surprised. While Ling Han's battle prowess was inferior to his, he had not been injured even when he had taken this strike from him head-on. This kind of defense caused even him to be slightly impressed. However, this was the prodigy that he anticipated. If Ling Han was only so mediocre that he would be killed with a few moves from him, how could he possibly arouse his Dao heart then? He raised his sword in a sweep, and sliced out at Ling Han. Wang, the sword exuded a terrifying cold light, and there were patterns of great Dao flickering. It was a pseudo-celestial tool by itself, and added with the powerful martial intent of Zhao Qingfeng, an endless might was instantly unleashed. Ling Han shouted loudly, and pushed the power of lightning to its pinnacle. Pang, a fierce clash, and he was once again sent flying. However, his physique was really too strong. Additionally, the right hand that had directly clashed with was wrapped in regulations of lightning, and he was not injured by the pseudo-celestial tool. This time, Zhao Qingfeng was really stunned. Previously, he had only delivered a flash of sword qi, so it was very normal that Ling Han could have taken it head-on without any injury, but now? That was really a genuine strike, and there was also the qi of slaughter that he had cultivated instilled in this strike, possessing incredibly frightening destructive power. And even with that, Ling Han was not injured. In fact, his fist hadn't even been scraped. Zhao Qingfeng was trembling slightly. However, it was not because of fear, but rather excitement. A good opponent was incredibly rare. If he could not find a suitable opponent, he would even battle the other 3 heavenly kings under Yan Xianlu to death. Only then could he completely arouse his full fighting spirit, and have a battle that was brilliant to the extreme. He naturally did not want that. If Yan Xianlu was angered, even he would shiver in fear. And now, an outsider had similarly aroused his fighting spirit. This naturally was best. It could refine his Dao heart, and he would also not have to anger Yan Xianlu. This was practically a gift that the heavens had bestowed on him. To repay you, I will ensure that you die in incredible agony so that this world will remember your anguish. Zhao Qingfeng stuck out his tongue and licked the blade of his sword. Even his eyes were slightly dazed, but his frightening aura surged out of his body like a tsunami, which also made him incredibly dangerous. Cultivating regulation of slaughter, he would not even remember who he was when he went nuts. His only thought was killing. Ling Han did not dare to be careless. This was definitely the strongest opponent among his peers that he had encountered in his life. The likes of Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng weren't even qualified to pick up Zhao Qingfeng's shoes. He released a battle cry, and the divine demon sword was summoned. Channeling the power of lightning, he clashed with Zhao Qingfeng. The 2 young prodigies' fighting spirit blazed, and they brandished their swords in a head-on clash with the other. Ding, ding, ding. Crisp sounds rang out continuously, and as they moved, they turned into loud blasts of thunder, deafening with their volume. Every time they clashed, it was a clash of great Dao. A dazzling light appeared, which then turned into a terrifying explosion. If this had not been the arena, where there were protective formations in place, it would definitely have been razed to the ground already, and also caused massive damage to the spectators. Bewitching Maiden Ro couldn't help but ball her hands into fists. She had heard of Zhao Qingfeng's reputation. He was doubtlessly a prodigy, and was also a maniac at the same time. Practically no one that he had set his eyes on could escape the fate of being killed. Though she was angered by Ling Han's lack of sensitivity, they had fought together on the same side a few times, and a certain level of amiable relations had naturally developed between them. She had no wish to see Ling Han die in Zhao Qingfeng's hands. But Zhao Qingfeng was too strong. He was completely suppressing Ling Han in the battle. Though Ling Han's defenses were indeed very strong, he could not hold on for long. There would come a time that his defenses would be penetrated. Her heart became anxious, and her fists also became more tightly clenched. Meanwhile, Sun Dong became excited. At the same time, he was also slightly impatient. It was clear that Zhao Qingfeng completely had the upper hand, so why was he still unable to kill Ling Han? Someone who had the same thoughts as he was Cheng Fengyun. He wanted nothing more than to go into the arena and give Zhao Qingfeng a hand. Ling Han had fallen into a disadvantage. Everyone could see that, and with every clash, just when everyone thought that Ling Han would not be able to hold on any longer, he always managed to stand back up like nothing had happened. This guy was also a freak. The cruel smile at Zhao Qingfeng's lips became more and more pronounced. He liked this kind of prodigy that had powerful toughness. Only then would he have enough fun through killing him, especially when his blade had sliced open Ling Han's neck and chest. Seeing that blood-splattered scene, his Dao heart would also be refined to the pinnacle in an instant, and he would be able to easily push open the barriers to his cultivation level. Be stronger so that all the blood burning in his body would blaze even stronger. Only when he killed Ling Han could he open the doors to the fifth severance. Ling Han seemed to be in a precarious position, but only he himself knew that he was not in the slightest danger at all. The strength of his physique had practically rushed up to the level of level 3 pseudo-divine metal. This meant that if anyone wanted to wound him, he would have to push his battle prowess up to the level of Yang Soul, at least. Fifth severance could be treated like Yang Soul, but was Zhao Qingfeng in the fifth severance? No way. What a joke. The reason why he had fallen into a disadvantage was firstly that he was a cultivation level lower, and secondly because he had only used the regulations of lightning. There were many regulations he had grasped, but if they were ranked in terms of power, the first place naturally belonged to regulations of fire, second was water, and lightning was only third. As for space, time, slaughter, and so on, he had only just barely touched on these areas. Using the regulations that were ranked third to face an opponent whose strength was close to his, wasn't it very natural that he had fallen into a disadvantage? Ling Han, if you only have this little bit of strength, your blood will definitely be spilt within 3 moves. Zhao Qingfeng's whole body was surging with a murderous aura. He had already boosted his regulation of slaughter to the pinnacle. The present him was a god of slaughter. Ling Han humphed. He, too, wanted to use the opponent to open the doors to the fourth severance. Otherwise, he would have directly drawn on the strongest power of a fire divine fetus. That destructive power that would explode in an instant was incredibly frightening. I already said not to disappoint me, but you only have this bit of strength. It's not enough. Not enough. Not enough. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes were bloodshot. Being able to withstand strong attacks was still not enough to completely arouse his murderous heart. He roared. Wang, his sword trembled slightly, and a streak of light flashed past. This pseudo-celestial tool instantly exploded with an incredible blaze of light, as if a blunt weapon had suddenly been sharpened into a blade. Shua, as the sword struck, a streak of blood actually spewed from Ling Han's body. Thankfully, it was only his skin that was scraped, and it was not a bone-deep wound. His strongest part was naturally his bones. They had reached close to the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal, but his skin, blood, and flesh was not as freakish as that. However, being able to split Ling Han's skin with a strike, the force behind this strike was really extremely strong. You think I have just cultivated the regulation of slaughter? Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly. Wrong, I am a bronze divine fetus, metal element. This is my original elemental alignment, and also my strongest regulations. No wonder. The murderous aura of regulation of slaughter was filled with endless destructive power, and the air of sharp metal similarly was focused on offensive. With the two compounded together, he was naturally capable of conquering every obstacle. You only have that little bit of strength? This is too sad, and to think I thought of you as a rival. I held myself back for so many days to finally make my move. You have disappointed me too much. Chapter 1872, showing off their respective strength. On the spectators' seats, a round of cheers suddenly rose up. For ordinary spectators, they were not concerned who would win or lose. As long as they could see an exciting battle, they would be satisfied. After spending so much money, what they wanted to see was blood spilling and flesh tearing. And now Ling Han's blood was finally spilt, which naturally caused their emotions to climax instantly. Kill! 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 Some were shouting with bloodshot eyes. That frantic madness was no less than that of Zhao Qingfeng himself, if not more. Sun Dong also belonged to them. As he yelled, he was still waving his arms in excitement. Lu Xianming immediately delivered a slap at him. Sun Dong's whole person spun around on the spot from the impact. Then, he was baffled, and asked in confusion, "Holy Sun, why did you hit me?" He felt very innocently wronged. Lu Xianming humphed. As one of superior status, did he have to give his subordinates an explanation? If you can't discern my body language, you still think of becoming my trusted aide? Idiot. Although Sun Dong had a fondness for women, he was a very clever man. When he realized that Lu Xianming was showing a strong displeasure, he hurriedly murmured his apologies. As for the reason, that could be discussed later. On the other side, Cheng Fengyun was even more excited. Because of Ling Han, he had suffered a lot. The noble young master of Cheng clan actually had to eat rock, slap himself, and even run naked. How could that be endured? After being repressed for 10 days, his emotions exploded in an instant, which naturally made him exhilarated to the extreme. Kill! Zhao Qingfeng, kill! He shouted, his face flushed red. Even the veins below his skin were popping, and it was very possible that his heart would explode due to overexcitement. Bewitching Maiden Ro was even more anxious, and thought, why has this idiot not admitted defeat yet? Does he want to be beaten to death? Why are you being so stubborn? To say nothing of her, even Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a little uncertain. Though she knew Ling Han's strength very well, Zhao Qingfeng's battle prowess was too vicious, and he had indeed wounded Ling Han with a single strike. She couldn't help but worry, her pretty face showing her anxiety. "Brother, this brat can't hold on for much longer," Shan Tianwu said excitedly. Under his brother's abuse of authority, he no longer dared to make a move on Ling Han. However, that did not mean that he did not hate Ling Han anymore. Now, as he watched Ling Han suffer an injury, it was as if he had been injected with adrenaline. That was how excited he was. Meanwhile, Shan Tianjiu was much more reserved. He smiled slightly, yet in his heart, he thought that all this was only a matter of course. Zhao Qingfeng was too strong, and even the holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier-level sects had been instantly defeated by him. At most, Ling Han could only be the holy son from a celestial king tier-level force. Faced with Zhao Qingfeng, it was definite that he would be outmatched. To last for so long before finally sustaining injuries was already very much beyond his expectations. Even those powerful figures nodded their heads continuously. Zhao Qingfeng's strength had already reached the peak stage of the severing mundane tier, and had in fact surpassed that. Because there was a large vacuum of battle prowess between the severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier, the present Zhao Qingfeng was within this vacuum. How could he not be strong? The spectators' cheers seemed capable of crumbling mountains and overturning seas. There were practically not many here that knew Ling Han, so they naturally would not be cheering for him. They were all leaning in favor of the elite. Zhao Qingfeng. Zhao Qingfeng. Zhao Qingfeng. Everyone all cheered together, as if wanting to shatter the sky itself. Zhao Qingfeng bared his teeth in a menacing grin, and raised the sword to level, aiming straight at Ling Han. If you can't completely ignite my Tao heart, what meaning is there for you to continue living? Just die. He roared, and charged towards Ling Han. Scram! Ling Han roared furiously. Brandishing his sword, he received the incoming attack. The brightness of lightning exploded madly, and fiery flames were still burning within. He, too, had channeled his divine sword, and used the regulations of fire. He kept feeling that Zhao Qingfeng had not used his full strength. Thus, he, too, had only channeled the regulations of lightning all this while, exchanging blows with the other. Now, since the other had revealed his trump card, he, too, began to unleash his true battle prowess. You want to break through? So do I, so let's just see who will become the stepping stone for the other. Boom! The two swords clashed, and a brilliant light surged out from the point where the blades clashed. Very soon, a pinpoint of light turned into a massive ball of light, which then turned into a terrifying explosion, sweeping out in all directions. Pang, pang, pang. All around the arena, multiple formation patterns lit up, blocking the shock wave that had gone berserk. Even so, the spectators were all dazed, and looked completely beside themselves. Too strong, really too fuck strong. Was this really the strength that a severing mundane tier should have? What was more frightening was that Ling Han actually turned his dire situation around. His whole body was burning with fiery flames, bestowing his brilliance on the world like a sun god. In this exchange, it was still Ling Han that was at a disadvantage, but it was no longer one-sided. This was a worthy battle. On the spectators' seats, the powerful figures all closed their mouths, sinking into silence. After a long while, the shorty with braided hair finally said, "This brat is still only a third Severance Peak stage." Ling Han's strength naturally would not be taken to heart by these powerful figures, but the problem here was that there was a third Severance Peak stage cultivator that had actually also stepped into the vacuum between severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier. This was really too exaggerating. Then when you advanced into the fourth severance, could it be that you would be able to match the dividing soul tier? Matching dividing soul tier is impossible. Even Yan Xianlu could not possibly fight a dividing soul tier opponent while he is still at the fourth severance. He would only be able to defeat all other severing mundane tiers, a powerful figure spoke up. Unless he can advance into the fifth severance, several mighty figures said at the same time. But when they said this, they all shook their heads. This was a possibility that was close to zero. Hee, since you all don't have a high opinion of this kid, I will take him as my disciple then, the shorty with braided hair said. Old geezer who, the height of battle prowess is one story, but what does that have to do with taking disciples? An elder with a tall build hurriedly jumped in. This brat, I, too, have the interest to take him as my disciple. I, on the other hand, do not want to take him as my disciple. However, I would like to take him in as a son-in-law, another powerful figure said. Suddenly, all these big shots were arguing with red faces. Ha ha ha, this only makes it interesting. Zhao Qingfeng was not stunned because of Ling Han's aggressive counterattack. Instead, he looked delighted. Only if Ling Han was strong enough could he completely arouse his murderous heart. Die! He charged over, laughing madly. He brandished his sword in a swipe, and delivered millions and millions of flashes of sword chi that filled the entire arena. This was the range of his sword chi. Because he was a metal element divine fetus, he was born with an affinity with metal, and could easily manipulate it at his slightest whim. And now, all the metal element of the heaven and earth had turned into sword chi, and added with his control of regulations at the fourth severance, this destructive power was unimaginable. Shua, all the sword chi shot out simultaneously, wanting to turn Ling Han into a beehive. Xiao, xiao, xiao. The sword chi descended together, turning into a massive ball of blades, and Ling Han was completely drowned in it. Is he dead yet? On the spectators' seats, everyone was holding their breath. This kind of battle was really too intense, too exciting, and they had even forgotten to breathe. Boom! Suddenly, a pillar of flame burst out from within the ball of blades, melting the ball of blades with its heat. Ling Han was standing proudly there, completely unwounded. Gasp! The spectators all exclaimed in shock. This was a little too strong, wasn't it? This Ling Han, who exactly was he? Could it be that he was the Holy Son from some celestial king tier-level sect, and had deliberately concealed his identity? Yet Zhao Qingfeng only laughed maniacally, and pounced, brandishing his sword in a swift slash. His murderous heart was blazing. Ling Han's strength had already caused his killing intent to completely boil over, and now the only thing left was to deliver the killing strike on Ling Han so he could be completely refined. Chapter 1873, Frightening Destructive Power. Ling Han released a battle cry. The divine demon sword swept out in a slash, clashing harshly with Zhao Qingfeng without the slightest show of weakness. The two young elites were utterly brilliant, earnestly releasing their brightness, which was strong enough to dazzle the galaxies, and last for eternity. Some holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier-level sects had not left, and were all dazed by this scene. Then, they paled in dejection. They could not compare, they really could not compare. While they, too, were emperor tiers, compared with these two, it was like one had just barely started, while the other had already reached the apex. They were on completely two different levels. What was more unacceptable and more unimaginable to them was that this was actually not the strongest of the severing mundane tier. Firstly, Ling Han was still a third severance peak stage. After he entered into the fourth severance, his battle prowess would definitely increase tremendously. Secondly, above these two people, there was another mountain that could not be moved. Yan Xianlu. Just how strong would he be then? Ling Han's excitement was aroused with the battle. Using the immovable deity metal body, he manifested 6 arms, and began to channel even more celestial techniques. Mere party tricks. Zhao Qingfeng scoffed. Though he was not a holy son, he was stronger than 99 and of all holy sons, and had a grasp of even more celestial techniques. His figure blurred, and his whole body suddenly enlarged to 10 times the original size, and harshly stomped on Ling Han with a single foot. This stomp was like a bronze mountain descending, and what was more astonishing was that there were countless seals flickering on the sole of his foot, and that was what was the most deadly about it. Is that right? Ling Han smirked, and lightly pressed with one arm. Banish. All of a sudden, that massive figure of Zhao Qingfeng vanished. But it was only an instant, and that massive foot had shattered the space, reappearing abruptly. Then, it was Zhao Qingfeng's gigantic figure. He clearly was only 15 to 18 meters tall, yet it was as if he was capable of supporting both heaven and earth. An iron fist flew over, directly aiming for Zhao Qingfeng's face. Ling Han was already long waiting for him. Humph! Zhao Qingfeng was not flustered at all. His whole head of black hair danced wildly, turning into sharp spikes that pierced towards Ling Han's left eye. You gave me a punch, and I would pay you back with a single sword strike. Ling Han did not even think of dodging or withdrawing his punch. This punch flew in a straight course, and he only closed his left eye, and slightly leaned his head to the side. Pang! This punch and sword strike both landed solidly. This was the first time Zhao Qingfeng had been struck by Ling Han. Under the blast of this fist, his whole person retreated a few dozen steps back, and with every step back, it had forcefully created a deep footprint on the ground. However, there were protective formations here, so the ground under his feet returned back to normal in a mere instant. A fist-shaped groove had shockingly appeared on Zhao Qingfeng's face, and what was strange was that his skin hadn't broken, nor was there any blood spilt. It was as if his fist had punched a metallic object, forcefully causing it to curve inwards. Bronze divine fetus truly had strong defenses. On the other side, the hair spikes had pricked Ling Han's face, but could not penetrate it at all. They only swiped past his face, leaving behind bloody marks that started from the corner of the left eye all the way to the right corner of the lips on Ling Han's face. Ling Han wiped his face. There was some blood on his hand. He channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and the bloody marks on his face instantly became lighter and recovered. This strike. At the moment it was unclear who was at the upper hand. "I want to kill you more and more," Zhao Qingfeng declared, the groove on his face slowly filling back out, and he, too, very quickly regained his original appearance. However, there was still the shape of a fist left behind. Clearly, his defenses could not compare with Ling Han's. This was natural. Firstly, Zhao Qingfeng was only a divine fetus, and what level was the indestructible heaven scroll at? Secondly, a metal element divine fetus was more focused on the offensive in the first place, and was not so much geared towards defense. Thirdly, it was mainly because his cultivation level was higher. Otherwise, it definitely would not have been so easy for him to recover. Ling Han took in a deep breath. After battling to this moment, he had no choice but to admit that the other party was the strongest opponent he had faced since entering into the celestial realm. If it had been before he had been tempered by the immortal flames, and their cultivation level had been completely equal, it would have been really hard to say who would be coming out the victor. And now, Ling Han could still manage a tie while his cultivation level was still a minor level lower, which showed fully the benefits being tempered by immortal flames had brought him. It had really strengthened him too much. If he couldn't even deal with Zhao Qingfeng now, what right did he have to compare to Yan Xianlu? Furthermore, Yan Xianlu might not be the strongest severing mundane tier in the celestial realm either. "Just come at me." Ling Han's fighting spirit blazed. He was the same as the Rain Emperor. They were both the type to become stronger with battle, and they could gain inspiration from battle too, breaking through in an instant. After this battle, his confidence and first severance would definitely improve to a new height, and there would be hopes for him to break through to the fourth severance. "I will send you on your way." Zhao Qingfeng smiled coldly, stretching out his hand, and then flipping it over. Murderous shadow. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Suddenly, countless flashes of murderous aura surged out from the palm of his hand, turning into multiple human figures. All of them looked exactly like Zhao Qingfeng, and even the aura they exuded was not different in the slightest. This time, everyone was astounded. One Zhao Qingfeng was already so hard to deal with, and now with 1, 2, 3, 4. There were already several dozen Zhao Qingfengs. Then wouldn't he be invincible in the severing mundane tier? He was called Invincible Qingfeng, and it was definitely not bragging. He truly was very strong. Ling Han's eyes swept over them. The Eye of Truth was already long since obsolete. He could not tell what difference these figures of murderous aura had with the original at all. He was not concerned, though, because he was sure that his physique was definitely invincible in the severing mundane tier. Even when meeting a fifth severance, as long as he had advanced into the fourth severance, he would be qualified to fight the former. If he had advanced into the fifth severance, then he could ignore even Yang Soul tier elites. Come on then. Zhao Qingfeng manifested a total of 99 doppelgangers, and added with the original, they just happened to total 100. He laughed, pointing his sword at Ling Han, and the other 99 doppelgangers did the same movement at the same time. Ultimate strike. He charged towards Ling Han, the murderous shadows blasting together. The light of Great Tao shone brilliantly. This strike was a perfect merging of the regulation of slaughter and regulations of metal. Ling Han smiled calmly, and struck out with a palm. Wang, boundless coldness suddenly arose. The source power of water activated. This was the Xianin source water, a celestial king tier-level entity. Merely in terms of level, there was not a single object or person that could reign over it. Freezing 1,000 miles. Ka. This coldness was too terrifying. It seeped out to the sides of the arena, and activated the protective formations, creating snowflakes on the formation patterns. At first, the attacks of severing mundane tiers naturally were no issue, and could be easily dispelled by the formations. But who asked for this to be Ling Han's source power, and a source water of the heaven and earth to be showing its might? Pa. The ice shattered, actually destroying a sliver of the formation patterns. Though it was practically indiscernible, a great many powerful figures all paled. You fucking freak. This formation was ascending origin tier in level, and a severing mundane tier brat actually managed to destroy a bit of it. Though it was a pitifully small portion, what did this mean? Ling Han had the ability to kill ascending origin tiers. Of course, the prerequisite was that the ascending origin tier elite did not resist, and only channeled regulations to protect himself. In that case, after Ling Han spent a horribly long time, he would be able to slowly disintegrate these regulations, and then kill the ascending origin tier elite. This was only a theoretical possibility. Whether it was replenishing the ascending origin tier's regulations for defense, or a casual strike, it was enough to turn all of Ling Han's efforts into waste and kill him immediately, but merely this sliver of possibility was already an inconceivable thing. Gods, just what kind of monster was this? Chapter 1874, Strongest Attack. Under the ice, the movements of the majority of Zhao Qingfeng slowed, and only the original was practically unaffected, continuing to launch his offensive on Ling Han. But without the support of many murderous shadows, the might of this attack was only that. With a strike from Ling Han, Peng, Zhao Qingfeng was sent backwards. Competing with doppelgangers, come then. Ling Han exclaimed lowly, and his life force was unleashed, 3 battle beasts walking out from within his body. Flames turned into the vermilion bird, water took the form of the azure dragon, and lightning became Zhu Li, and they were all immortal beasts of immortal beasts. Comparatively speaking, Zhu Li was considerably smaller. It could not be helped the source power of lightning was not qualified to compete with the 9 heavens flame and Xianin source water in a contest of source powers. The 3 battle beasts appeared, and instantly roared simultaneously, exuding an aura that could suppress all the heavens for eternity. My gods! On the spectators' seats, someone grabbed their head, shivering uncontrollably. Are these really battle beasts that have been manifested? Why do I feel like they could insta-kill me with a single blow? Me too, someone beside him said in a shaking voice. The moment these 3 battle beasts appeared, at least 99% severing mundane tiers trembled, and even emperor tiers paled, feeling a humiliation that they could not accept. They couldn't even match these 3 battle beasts. It was enough that they could not match Ling Han. Both he and Zhao Qingfeng were super freaks, but this was only a technique that Ling Han had cast, and they couldn't hold up against even that, which was something they could not accept at all. Finally, Zhao Qingfeng looked serious. He, too, discovered the might of these 3 battle beasts. They were really very strong, and a coldness that made it seem as if he could be killed at any second rose up in him. However, this kind of coldness did not make him afraid in the slightest. On the other hand, he became incredibly excited. When he went berserk, his only wish was to kill, whether the one being killed was another or himself. Of course, as he was alive even now, it would only be others that were killed. Ha ha ha. He laughed madly, multiple seals of great Tao appearing on his body. His fighting spirit had taken solid form, and soared straight into the skies. Materialize, he shouted, and the 99 murderous shadows turned back into murderous aura, which then materialized into a gigantic human figure. Charge! He charged towards Ling Han, while the murderous aura figure met the 3 battle beasts. Boom! 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 By now, the battle was divided into 2 different areas, with Ling Han battling Zhao Qingfeng, while the 3 battle beasts were fighting the murderous aura figure to death. The battles on both sides were incredibly intense. Blood splattered. Even if Ling Han's physique was incredibly tough, it was still inevitable that his skin would be split, but with the toughness of his godly bones, these were only light injuries. Zhao Qingfeng was not much better off. The bronze physique's defenses also had a limit, and after this limit was surpassed, he, too, would suffer injury. The two supreme prodigies were both covered with wounds. They had really met a match. It was rare that they could encounter an opponent that could allow them to go all out in battle like this. While they could also go all out in a battle against dividing soul tier, they would not have that feeling of pressure as if they were walking on a tightrope, so that would not have the slightest benefit in improving their battle prowess. I have found your weakness. Zhao Qingfeng bared his mouth in a grin. He delivered a series of stabs, the angle of his strikes incredibly tricky, intending to pierce through the boneless parts of Ling Han's body, and damage Ling Han's internal organs. After fighting for so long, he was naturally clear that the toughness of Ling Han's bones was not something that he could breach, but his skin was not as tough as that. As long as he could avoid the bones, he would be able to inflict a fatal injury on Ling Han. Ling Han merely humped. If the divine physique that had been cultivated through the indestructible heaven scroll could be dealt with like that, what right would it have to be ranked above celestial king tier techniques? Wanting to damage his internal organs? Easier said than done. However, his blood and flesh were too heavily damaged, which would also cause a very serious injury to him, and he could not truly ignore it. Ling Han, I am already tired of this. Zhao Qingfeng declared loudly. His bronze-like body exuded a dazzling brilliance, and his fighting spirit and vitality were burning to the pinnacle. This state could not be maintained for long. He needed to immediately kill Ling Han, and then gain his breakthrough amidst the slaughter. Heavens will guillotine, he exclaimed lowly. Boom, his whole person had vanished, and what replaced him was actually a gigantic bronze guillotine. The blade of the guillotine was shockingly his neck connected to his head. Wang, an indescribable aura rolled out. Ling Han felt as if his whole body had been set rigidly in place, and an indescribable reverence rose up from the depths of his heart. It was as if this guillotine was executing punishment on behalf of the heavens, and he could only accept the punishment without protest. The bronze guillotine flew over whilst Zhao Qingfeng proudly proclaimed, I am heaven's will itself. This was his strongest secret technique, the strongest attack that drew on the divine fetus. No matter how much of a prodigy you were, you ultimately would not be able to escape being sentenced by heaven's will. Your only fate would be death. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared, and instantly swept away all the negative feelings in his heart. However, the might of this guillotine was indeed frightening. It was really possible that it had approached the level of Yang Soul tier. But so what? The guillotine opened, and harshly chopped out at Ling Han. Wang, the regulations of the great Tao rippled out, celestial light streaking through. Not good. Lu Xianming immediately stood up. Just now, even if there were defensive formations in place, his spirit had still been influenced by the heavens will guillotine. He actually hadn't reacted at the first instant, and only when the guillotine blade chopped down did he finally come back to his senses. Oh no, Ling Han was dead. His expression was full of bafflement. Someone being capable of fighting a close battle with Zhao Qingfeng, how hard would it be to find this kind of martial arts prodigy? But now? He had actually been eliminated by Zhao Qingfeng. Sighing, he slowly sat back down. Since he had already died, it was only a waste of emotion to think further of him. Meanwhile, Sun Dong yelled out in excitement. He had finally been killed. Now, his A*S could finally be comforted. Cheng Fengyun was also incredibly elated. After commenting for so many days, his judgment had finally come true for once, which made him practically weep in joy. Bewitching Maiden Row and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, meanwhile, were despondent. Though cheers rang out like thunder from all around them, they couldn't hear the slightest bit of it. In the end, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was not as confident in Ling Han as the Empress. Otherwise, the Empress would not possibly be worried in the slightest. As the celestial light dispersed, that guillotine blade was still placed at Ling Han's neck, but the strike could not go through at all. They could all see Zhao Qingfeng's face was filled with shock. This had surpassed his imagination. He had drawn on the strongest attack of his divine fetus. It contained a sliver of celestial king tier regulations, and actually still did not manage to sever Ling Han's neck and behead him. This was extremely inconceivable. The cheers in the arena came to an abrupt halt. What was going on here? He didn't die even with that? Not only did he not die, he actually did not spill even the slightest drop of blood? Sun Dong was astounded. Cheng Fengyun was shocked, and a feeling of having fallen into a trap rose up in him. Ling Han showed a smile, and said, "So this is your strongest move? Nothing impressive." He actively channeled the indestructible heaven scroll. To say nothing of Zhao Qingfeng, even if Yan Xianlu himself was here, even if he was a fifth severance, he could not possibly kill Ling Han. The defense of the present Ling Han was at least at Yin soul level. "You should take a strike from me too," Ling Han stated calmly. The power of the fire divine fetus was unleashed, and boom, boundless flames surged out. It was as if a massive explosion had taken place in the whole arena, making everyone widen their eyes as if they were blind. They could not see anything clearly at all. When the light of the flames washed away, another figure had appeared in the arena. That was an elder that had a tall build, and like an eagle picking up a chicken, he had picked up a person in his hand, and that was Zhao Qingfeng. His limbs were drooping weakly, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Chapter 1875, Breaking Through. However, Ling Han sighed. Zhao Qingfeng was not dead. He had indeed sustained severe injuries, but at the last crucial moment, a powerful figure had interfered and saved him. The elder with a tall build turned to Ling Han, and said, "Brat, don't be disappointed. I am saving you here. If you had killed a member of the Eternal Prosperity sect, there would have been no place for you to hide in this whole wide world. You are an elite, so whatever you say." Ling Han bowed slightly, and said, "Milord speaks true." In any case, he did not cultivate the regulation of slaughter. He had accumulated boundless appreciation through this battle, and once he had completely digested this, he would have a chance of advancing into the fourth severance. As for Zhao Qingfeng, when he left the city, he would find a chance to kill him. In this battle, Ling Han is victorious, this tall, broad elder announced. This process of turning the tide had happened too quickly, and everyone had a slight difficulty in accepting this turn of events. Wasn't it Zhao Qingfeng who still had the absolute upper hand? Why had he lost all of a sudden? However, since this was personally announced by this powerful figure, who would dare express disagreement? Those who had placed bets all sighed. All of them had placed their bets on Zhao Qingfeng's victory, and the only difference was how many moves it would take, but now the result was so beyond expectations. One could only say that the gamble house had turned over a great profit. Everyone left gradually, and those like Sun Dong and Cheng Fengyun were at a loss. Even now, they had not come back to their senses. Why was it Ling Han that had won? Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden finally released the breath that she was holding. She could feel that her whole body was covered with sweat, her face astonishingly pale. Meanwhile, Bewitching Maiden Ro humphed. This damn man was clearly very strong, yet caused her to worry so long for nothing. He really was despicable. Ling Han left, yet he had just barely walked out when he was met with a familiar face. "Brother Ling, I never thought I would actually see you here." Lu Xianming laughed loudly. Sun Dong, who was following behind him, shivered in fear. Only now did he realize what a big mistake he had previously made. As it turned out, Lu Xianming and Ling Han knew each other. No wonder Lu Xianming would be displeased about him, and the crux of the matter lay here. His heart clenched, and he instantly thought of a measure to make up for it. He hurriedly shot out quickly, bowed deeply towards Ling Han, and said, "Brother Ling, I have previously offended you greatly. That was out of my own foolishness, and I hope Brother Ling would forgive me." A sliver of a smile flashed across Lu Xianming's face. This subordinate was not too bad. He had taken the initiative to admit his error, and had given Ling Han enough face. Lu Xianming was sure that Ling Han would be very pleased. Ling Han, on the other hand, did not think too much of it. Sun Dong had come to provoke him, and he had punished the former for it too, so he had long since forgotten about it unless Sun Dong did something again. Ling Han thus waved a hand dismissively, and said, "I have already forgotten." Forgotten? Forgotten naturally meant that it was all water under the bridge. Only now did Sun Dong sigh in relief. He stole a glance at Lu Xianming, and seeing a smile appear on the latter's face, he knew that he had done the right thing. "Brother Lu." Ling Han also raised his clasped hands in greeting towards Lu Xianming. "Come, let's continue the conversation after we return," Lu Xianming said smilingly. "There's no rush. I still have a companion," Ling Han replied with a smile. "Yo, just one? Then what about me?" Bewitching Maiden Ro walked over with swaying hips, and even if Lu Xianming had strong self-control against feminine charms, he couldn't help but look stunned. Even less needed to be said about Sun Dong. He had a fondness for women, so how could he possibly resist bewitching Maiden Ro's charms? Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden stood beside bewitching Maiden Ro, and immediately paled in comparison. As far as Ling Han knew, there were only two others that could emerge superior over bewitching Maiden Ro, the Empress and Hunyo. Ling Han sighed. "What are you playing at, you witch? Are you really planning to deliver the 9 revolutions charm physique for my cultivation?" "Heh, since you are Brother Ling's friends, then let's go together," Lu Xianming said with a smile, though light flickered in the gaze he directed at bewitching Maiden Ro. He had the confidence to capture this seductive witch for himself. Who was he? A young master of Alchemy City, and very soon he would advance, and would become the future master of Alchemy City. And that was still not enough to make this delicate woman throw herself into his arms? Ling Han? Ling Han was indeed very strong, but this was Alchemy City. No matter how strong you were, you would only be a hired thug. Moreover, just how far was the severing mundane tier from ascending origin tier? At least in the future billions and billions of years, Ling Han only had potential. Hearing Lu Xianming say thus, Ling Han could not refuse, either. He only beckoned Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden over, and wrapped an arm around her slender waist, which calmed Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's heart greatly. There were thousands of years of affection between herself and Ling Han. Lu Xianming saw this, and naturally was even more certain in his heart. Though he did not know why Ling Han was not interested in bewitching Maiden Ro, what did that have to do with him? The group arrived at Lu Xianming's courtyard, and arrangements for the accommodations of Ling Han and his group were made first. Then, everyone sat in the center of a garden, with fine wine served to them. Sipping wine, they conversed idly. Lu Xianming's main focus was naturally recruiting Ling Han, but he did not have any position to do so at present. You see, he had first wanted to save Ling Han, yet had missed the chance, leading to the situation now in which he still owed Ling Han his life. How could he bring himself to speak of recruitment? Then they'd just start from being friends. He was the holy son of Alchemy City, and with his invitation, Lu Xianming naturally did not need to be concerned about the rules of the 4th level. Ling Han could stay however many days he wanted as long as Lu Xianming did not throw him out. On the 2nd day, the Tao-regulating pill was delivered. Ling Han did not consume it, but rather handed it over to the Empress. There were really too many treasures he had. Even the majority of celestial kings would be bloodshot with envy about the 9 heavens flame and Xianin source water. In comparison, the Empress's foundations were much weaker. And they had also been gained with the support of small tower. By now, only precious treasures like the heavenly Dao jade could be of any help to Ling Han. The Dao regulating pill was really not enough. In the case of the heavenly Dao jade, he could only refine it after he had reached about the 4th severance peak stage. Otherwise, it would only make up for the shortcomings in his previous path of cultivation, but could not help one to attempt the 5th severance. The Empress naturally would not be reserved with Ling Han. Initially, she still needed some time to break through to the 4th severance, but with the Dao regulating pill, she would definitely be able to break through in a shorter period of time. Ling Han was the same. He had really gained much from his battle with Zhao Qingfeng, and he himself had reached the 3rd severance peak stage. After this battle, he had reached a state of perfection, and immediately entered into seclusion to begin his breakthrough to the 4th severance. This disappointed Lu Xianming slightly. He was still hoping to form amicable relations with Ling Han. In his eyes, attempting the 4th severance was definitely something that would take a long time, and without over 10,000 years, one shouldn't even think of succeeding. Never mind. Their lifespan was unlimited now, so if he had to wait 10,000 years, then so be it. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han sat down cross-legged underneath the reincarnation tree. The 4th severance was already within sight, and he only had to complete the final dash. The battle with Zhao Qingfeng continuously flashed through his mind, and Ling Han picked out the shortcomings that he had observed. All these needed to be improved on, and the experience that came from battle caused him to rise to a higher level. Underneath the reincarnation tree, one day was equivalent to 100 years. Even if Ling Han had already seen hope, he had still stayed in the Black Tower for a whole 2 months, and only then did he finally sense the turning point for his breakthrough. When he stood up, the Empress, too, opened her eyes. Her breakthrough was similarly in sight. The two of them exited the Black Tower, their figures stepping on air, and arriving at a desolate mountain. Then, they released their auras. Suddenly, tribulation clouds rolled out, enshrouding the air above them respectively, which was incredibly frightening. Fuck, is there something wrong with you people? At this moment, a naked Mad suddenly popped out of the wilderness. As he stopped in fury, he rapidly threw on some clothing, and there were actually 2 other women beside him. They similarly were quickly putting on their clothes. They just happened to be having a romp in the wild. Chapter 1876, Pill Concoction Again. Shimanda felt very depressed. By nature, he was wanton and unrestrained, and today, on a whim, he had brought 2 of his paramours to this wild mountainous area. With the skies as their blanket and the earth as their bed, he planned to have a completely unreserved party of 3. In the end, they had yet to begin when tribulation clouds had come all of a sudden. Someone was enduring a heavenly tribulation. Ordinarily speaking, the heavens had good eyes, and as long as you did not actively interfere, the divine lightning would not strike you even if you were close at hand. But after the divine lightning descended, what would happen to the shock waves that were created in the process was not within the heavens' range of consideration. Thus, when someone was experiencing the heavenly tribulation, it was still best to avoid them as much as possible. Unless it was a severing mundane tear enduring the heavenly tribulation, and you yourself were a dividing soul tear, then you couldn't just boldly stand within the scope of the heavenly tribulation. The aftermath that was generated could not possibly cause much damage to you only then. The problem here was that both Ling Han and the Empress were existences that were close to the monarch tier, and they were experiencing the heavenly tribulation for 4th severance, which was astonishingly terrifying. Shimanda naturally could only hurriedly pull his 2 female companions along and flee in a panic. Fuck, are you people doing it on purpose? When he had reached a safe area, Shimanda couldn't help but point at the skies and curse. Wasn't I just indulging myself in a bout of public s*****? Do you guys have to cause trouble to me like this? However, when his eyes glimpsed the Empress, a stunned expression instantly appeared on his face. Fuck, how could there be such a beautiful woman? Young master. The two beautiful women both played coy, patting their bountiful breasts, and looking as if they had not regained their wits from the terrible scare, and needed him to soothe their fears. If this had been any other time, Shimenda would definitely have gone nearer with a perverted expression, but at present, he did not have the slightest bit of interest. He carelessly pushed the two women to one side, his eyes fixed on the Empress while shining with a light that made him look like a hungry wolf. This guy. Finally, he had spotted Ling Han, and couldn't help but experience a shock. It's the guy that defeated Zhao Qingfeng. Immediately, he felt a cold chill rise up from the soles of his feet, and in an instant, all his lecherous intent was erased without a trace. The Shiman clan was very strong, and had an immortal palace-tier ancestor keeping watch. In alchemy, they could also be considered a respected clan, but it was only that. They had not reached the extent of having a critical role. However, it was rumored that a considerable number of powerful figures had already expressed interest in Ling Han, wanting to take him as disciple, son-in-law, or something of the like. In short, Ling Han was very popular now, overwhelmingly and outrageously popular. To offend Ling Han at this point in time was really a very unwise action. Shimenda might be a pervert, but he was no idiot. Our Shiman clan, too, wants to recruit this man, but has completely no way to contest with those mighty figures, Shimenda thought. However, he could be considered as having incurred a debt to me with this, so I could use this opportunity to befriend him. You should not covet the wives of your friends. Shimenda was well aware of this principle. Though he was lecherous, even robbers had their principles. He was definitely not going to steal his friend's wife, and all his friends were well aware of that. He would just sit by and watch as Ling Han and the Empress endured the heavenly tribulation, and when they were done, he would immediately approach and worm his way into befriending them. But as he watched, his expression slowly changed. This was the fuck heavenly tribulation for fourth severance? Did they think he had never endured the fourth severance? When he endured the heavenly tribulation for the fourth severance, it did not even have a 100th of the power behind this. No. It was not only a 100th, it did not even have a 10,000th of the might of this heavenly tribulation. As expected of the man that had defeated Zhao Qingfeng. Hold on, Ling Han being so strong was one thing, but why was the heavenly tribulation for this beauty also so terrifying? Realization suddenly dawned on him. The heavenly tribulation was actually the best reflection of one's strength. The stronger the heavenly tribulation, the higher one's strength was. That was why the heavens would increase the might of the heavenly tribulation to temper them as appropriate. Monsters, two monsters. This kind of woman was absolutely no one that he could covet. Shimenda immediately made up his mind, and did not dare to have any further ideas about the Empress. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation had passed, the tribulation clouds dispersed, and both Ling Han and the Empress descended onto the ground, exchanging a smile with each other. Ling Han had greater gains. He had tempered his physique again, and truly reached the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal. By now, while his battle prowess had still not reached the level of Yang Soul Tier, it was already very, very difficult for Yang Soul Tiers to kill him. Even if they were to refine him through regulations, that would need years to accomplish. If he faced Zhao Qingfeng now. A confident smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Within 100 moves, he would definitely be able to kill him. Not defeat, but rather kill. Ling Han looked towards Shimenda, smiled, and said, "Friend, apologies. I thought there was no one here." It's fine. In any case, I was not injured either." Shimenda grinned brightly. "I've yet to congratulate young Master Ling for advancing to the fourth severance. Becoming a dividing soul tier will be just around the corner. Ling Han was slightly surprised, and asked, "You know me?" By now, who would not know of young Master Ling in Alchemy City? Shimanda asked. This naturally was an exaggeration, but flattery was always pleasant, so these words of flattery still made Ling Han considerably pleased. At least, the Empress was very pleased. No matter how others flattered her, respected her, or feared her, she would take it all as a matter of course, but if it was flattering Ling Han, she would be elated. Ling Han chuckled. He naturally would not become smug and conceited, and treat this person as a close friend just because of a few flattering words. "Young Master Ling, why don't you come and visit my humble abode so I could host a celebratory feast in your honor?" Shimanda took the chance to offer an invitation. Ling Han shook his head, and replied, "No need. I have other business." He paused, and thinking that he had indeed almost caused the heavenly tribulation to implicate these three people, he said, "I am presently staying at Lu Xianming's place. If you are free, you can come and pay a visit." "Good. Good. Good." Shimanda was just feeling a little disappointed, but when he heard the last few words, he was naturally overjoyed, and nodded hurriedly. Ling Han directed a smile at the other, and holding the Empress's slender hand, he returned to Lu Xianming's place. When Lu Xianming knew that Ling Han had come out of seclusion, he couldn't help but feel pleasantly surprised. He had thought he would have to wait over 10,000 years at first, and when he discovered that Ling Han had actually successfully broken through to the fourth severance, he was incredibly astounded. It had just been 2 months, and Ling Han had actually broken through. He really was a freak. Lu Xianming could not help but feel impressed. It was no wonder that Ling Han could defeat Zhao Qingfeng. His talent in martial arts was really awesome to the extreme. Thankfully, he himself was an alchemist, and no matter how outstanding Ling Han was, he could not possibly threaten his position. Lu Xianming wanted to celebrate Ling Han's feat, but was met with Ling Han's tactful refusal. The latter went out to look for a time cultivation chamber. He wanted to become a celestial-level alchemist in the shortest period of time possible. Initially, there were a great many higher-ups that wanted to recruit him, but he had just come out of seclusion, and then entered into seclusion again. It could not be helped. These people could only wait, which also caused some powerful figures to become angered. "You are but a mere severing mundane tier, so don't you think you are being too arrogant?" But when they found out that Ling Han had broken through to the fourth severance, the anger of these mighty figures all disappeared without a trace. Prodigy. He was really too genius. Immediately, they made adjustments to their previous plans, and brought out more sincere conditions to recruit Ling Han. For the moment, Ling Han did not know of these matters. He was inside the time cultivation chamber, tirelessly working on pill concoction. On the fourth level, the acceleration effects had improved from 20 times to 30 times, but the price was also enough to strike one dumbfounded. The acceleration of 30 times shockingly needed 30,000 star stones for a single day. And this was also why people from the first level could come here, but there would not be many at all who could take out enough star stones to stay here for a day. Ling Han swept an eye over the Black Tower, and paid for 10 days. 10 days, after acceleration, would mean 300 days, which was enough for him to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills. He began to concoct pills, and failed a few times consecutively. When it had reached the 5th day in the outside world, which was also over 150 days later in the cultivation chamber, he finally entered into a prime condition. The success of his first cauldron of celestial pills was close at hand. Ah! He suddenly humphed lowly, a strong shiver overcoming his whole body. All of a sudden, he collapsed onto the ground. Pang! The cauldron went out of control, and exploded immediately. Chapter 1877, The Curse Activates. Multiple veins popped out on Ling Han's forehead. He felt incredible agony take over his whole body. The black murderous curse had activated. It would activate once a year. Though the normal time had not passed, Ling Han had spent a considerable amount of time inside the time cultivation chamber, and added with that time, the time limit of a year was already reached. Because he himself had not expected it either, he was caught completely off guard. Ling Han directly lost all control, leading to the explosion of the cauldron. Now, he was not in the mood to bother about that. He could only curl up on the ground, resisting that indescribable agony. Old Demon Blood Shadow was so sure that Ling Han would obediently work for him, and naturally there was a reason for it. That was because this pain was really incredibly piercingly agonizing, surpassing everything Ling Han had experienced before. Ling Han gritted his teeth, and worked hard on resisting it. He had powerful determination, and did not submit under this kind of agonizing pain. Instead, he sat up in a cross-legged position, resisting the black murderous curse head-on. Not only was he going to become a monarch tier, he was also going to be an invincible overlord of all monarch tiers. Thus, he had to reach absolute perfection in every single aspect. Natural talent, determination, and effort, not a single one was dispensable. Multiple black-veined patterns appeared on his body. That was the black murderous curse activating, and wreaking havoc in Ling Han's body. There was one thing that the old demon Blood Shadow had lied to Ling Han about: when the black murderous curse activated completely, the pain that Ling Han endured would only reach this extent. However, the moment it activated, it would not stop, but would rather torment Ling Han for as long as 10,000 years, and only then would it end his life. He said that when it truly activated, it would be 10,000 times worse, but that was only a mere threat for Ling Han so that he would do the job as best as he could. Droplets of cold sweat poured down Ling Han's forehead, but aside from the beginning when he was completely unprepared, and released a yell of pain, he did not let out a single sound further. He gritted his teeth tightly, and observed the channeling of the black murderous curse. It should be known that this was something planted by an ascending origin tier elite, and it was unavoidable that it contained his Tao. However, one could not possibly observe it usually. He would have long since been driven to screaming out in pain under the agonizing torment. How could he possibly bother to take notice of this? Ling Han had strong determination. He was observing the channeling of the black murderous curse. Then, as long as his strength had reached a certain extent, he would be able to dispel this black murderous curse by himself. If he could avoid dying once, he naturally did not wish to die. This kind of torment lasted for a total of a whole day and night. Ling Han wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead, and felt that all his clothes had been dampened with sweat. His spirit was very worn out, but the toughness of his spirit had strengthened slightly. A sliver of a smile appeared on his face. The old demon Blood Shadow would never have imagined that not only would this black murderous curse not become a seal that pushed him to death, it would instead have the effect of tempering his spirit. However, Ling Han did not have the slightest intention of thanking this old bastard. Once he had enough strength, he would definitely take off this old bastard's head. He rested for a dozen over days, and only then did he dust himself off, and continued pill concoction. With the acceleration of time, 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. Ling Han's expression was slightly excited, and with a sudden shout, "Pa, pa, pa," he delivered 3 consecutive palm strikes on the alchemy cauldron. The cauldron instantly shattered, but it was not an explosion due to failure. This timite had truly been destroyed by Ling Han's assault. 3 alchemical pills floated in the air. It was as if they had sprouted wings as they flew around in the air, but because this was a closed-off space, they could not possibly escape no matter what. Ling Han laughed, and stretching a hand to grab at the empty air, he made the 3 pills fall into the palm of his hand. Pills completed. They were Purple Moon Spirit Suppression Pills, a type of 1-star celestial pill. It was used by severing mundane tiers, having the effect of suppressing one's spirit. During cultivation, cultivators would be comprehending Great Tao, but great Tao was boundless, so how could it be so easily analyzed? It was very possible that the tables would be turned, causing the cultivator to lose himself within great Tao. This purple moon spirit suppression pill would then be able to suppress one's spirit so he would not lose himself. The ratio of celestial medicines used was different, and the purple moon spirit suppression pill also had different grades due to the difference in skill of the alchemist, which were low grade, medium grade, high grade, and peak grade, respectively. These 3 purple moon spirit suppression pills of mine should be capable of belonging to the medium grade, Ling Han assessed. This was not being modest or boastful, as that was indeed the case. Being able to reach the medium grade with my first successful concoction, I am indeed awesome. This time, he was slightly proud of himself. However, this was actually Ling Han's second successful concoction. The first time he had been about to succeed, he had experienced the sudden assault from the black murderous curse, but the experience he should have accumulated he had still accumulated. Furthermore, his spirit had also become stronger this time round. Thus, the moment he succeeded in his concoction, it was medium grade. There was a reason for it. Ling Han used his divine sense like a blade, and emblazoned Han on the alchemical pills. Every alchemist would inscribe a unique seal on creations they were proud of. Though this could not be considered a creation that Ling Han was proud of, it was still the first cauldron of celestial pills he had concocted, and he really had spent a very, very long time on it. This was worth remembering. Because he had not reached the time of 10 days, Ling Han simply chose to concoct another cauldron of purple moon spirit suppression pills. However, the grade did not increase and reach high grade this time. It was still medium grade. Even if he was the alchemy emperor, he could not ascend the heavens with a single step. He exited the cultivation chamber, and returned to Lu Xianming's place. At this time, at least over a dozen forces sent representatives, and they were waiting for him. Some wanted to take him as a disciple, while some wanted to take him as a son-in-law. In short, they had all shown their greatest sincerity to make him one of their own. As usual, Ling Han refused them all. What a joke, wasn't this looking down on him? His target was becoming the future master of this alchemy city. Seeing Ling Han refuse the others one after another, Lu Xianming thought that Ling Han had done so for his sake, so he was naturally extremely pleased. Ling Han made his queries. To become an alchemist of Alchemy City, he had to undergo a test at the Alchemist Pavilion. The first step was becoming a junior apprentice, and then a middle-level apprentice, and then a high-level apprentice, and then only would he be qualified to be tested as an alchemist. The requirement for a high-level apprentice was being able to concoct level 20 divine pills, and above that was a 1-star alchemist, which was reasonable. Ling Han gave an O. Actually, he was able to become a high-level apprentice right from the very beginning, but only thought that he would be able to open the great doors of Alchemy City by becoming a 1-star alchemist. He had really thought too much. But that was fine. By now, he could directly emerge as a 1-star alchemist, which was even more awesome. He went off to the Alchemist Pavilion to undergo the test. This time, he had really kept a low profile, focusing completely on gaining the status of an alchemist. Thus, he did not even ask the Empress and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to accompany him. You see, if he would still attract trouble like that, then it really was not his fault. He did not delay the slightest on his journey. Ling Han soon arrived at the Alchemist Pavilion. It was an incredibly majestic and austere pavilion, occupying as many as 10,000 fields, and was indescribably tall and towering. This was the landmark of Alchemy City, or at least one of them. The truly majestic Alchemist Pavilion was at the 5th level, which was 100 times grander than the 4th level. Ling Han stood, raising his head to study it. As he ascended, there were as many as 300 meters of steps alone, and they were all paved with high-grade jade, exuding a faint luster. Ling Han. A voice rang out, and there was a young man standing on the steps. He was looking down on Ling Han loftily, and when he saw that Ling Han had glimpsed him, he descended the steps. I am O Kansas. O Kan, one of the holy sons of Alchemy City. Clearly, he was deliberately waiting for Ling Han here, but why? Chapter 1878, Holy Son O Kansas. Ling Han smiled faintly, and asked, How can I help you, Holy Son O? O Kan had already descended the stairs with a few steps, and walked to Ling Han's side. He bared his mouth in a grin, 2 rows of teeth white and neat, as he said, You are truly a busy person. It really is difficult to even meet you. Ling Han only chuckled in response. This O Kan put on a pretense as if they were old friends, but he was not even familiar with him. To say nothing of being familiar with him, he was not familiar with Lu Xianming, even. It was just that the latter was very cordial, and added with the fact that Ling Han had also saved him before, he had thus accepted his invitation. His divine sense was sensitive, and discovered that there were at least 4 individual divine senses locked on him. But they were only at the severing mundane tiers level, so he naturally was completely fearless. They should belong to O Kan's guards. He himself was only in the severing mundane tier. An alchemist did not need to have a high cultivation level, because the requirement for concocting celestial pills was only the severing mundane tier. If they could advance into this level, then they would be able to concoct even celestial pills. But in truth, because their divine sense was not strong enough, it was practically an impossible feat for a severing mundane tier to concoct a celestial pill. At least, a miracle like that had yet to happen. Ordinarily, a severing mundane tier could concoct 2-star celestial pills at most, while dividing soul tier could concoct 3-star pills, only a level higher than themselves. And also because of that, when Alchemy City chose its heirs, there was no need for cultivation level to become the largest factor of consideration. It was fine as long as they could advance into the severing mundane tier. With oceans of alchemical pills bombarding them without any care for the expense, advancing to the ascending origin tier was no mere dream. Of course, being capable of becoming high-grade alchemists, how could they themselves possibly be any idiots? Thus, the chairperson of Alchemy City ordinarily would possess the cultivation level of the ascending origin tier, but this battle prowess was possibly the weakest in the ascending origin tier. Even if they reached consummate level, they would only possess the standard of great accomplishment. Whatever the case, because O Kan's cultivation level was not high, and furthermore, they were in Alchemy City, the only people he could mobilize would only be at the severing mundane tier. Ling Han, are you interested in working for me? O Kan saw Ling Han was expressionless, and did not beat around the bush, getting straight to the point. Ling Han shook his head, and very crisply answered, No. O Kan's expression looked a little ugly after having been rebuffed like this. For a holy son like himself, whose status was noble, it was really very difficult to hear others say, no, to him. Thankfully, his composure control was not too bad, and he immediately suppressed this kind of displeasure. Aren't you going to hear the conditions I offer? He forced out a sliver of a smile. No need. Ling Han shook his head. The other party had probably misunderstood. Ling Han had no intention of working for Lu Xianming at all, and now he was only a guest at the Lu clan. But true, this was Alchemy City where alchemists were revered and respected. Cultivators had their martial arts, and weren't they all wanting to sell themselves to high-grade alchemists, and would thus have no worries of getting a few alchemical pills for their efforts? After advancing to the severing mundane tier, the rate of cultivation would slow down to a snail's pace if a cultivator could not be supported with celestial medicines. They could only advance further by depending on celestial medicines. After advancing into the severing mundane tier, cultivation was actually a contest with time. Otherwise, a few more immortals' tribulations, and they really would be killed if their own strength had not increased. Hence why alchemists had such outstanding status. From a certain aspect, they had grasp over the life of a cultivator. Ken had been rebuffed twice in a row, and his displeasure finally seeped into his expression, and he said, Ling Han, don't forget yourself. No matter how much of a prodigy you are merely a severing mundane tier, and are not yet qualified to ask for sky-high prices. Ling Han sighed. Why had he encountered yet another idiot? What did he do? Refusing your offer of recruitment means that I am looking down on you, and have forgotten myself in my conceit? Fuck, has he proposed a price? Asking for sky-high prices your sister. How could there be such a person who went off talking on his own? Ling Han's expression also turned cold, and he said, step aside, and don't waste my time. Ling Han. Can's voice rose a few pitches higher. I know, you are merely waiting for a good offer. I might as well tell you, though Lu Xianming's present situation is indeed superior, us other holy sons and holy daughters are not people to be trifled with either. There are 9 holy sons and holy daughters of Alchemy City, and aside from a few useless pieces of trash, Aoyu Kanjiaobang and Qin Guyu are all qualified to contest with Lu Xianming. Furthermore, we have already decided to join forces and kick him out of the contest first. You are clinging to a tree that is destined to wilt, isn't that too stupid? This was an idiot. Which ear have you heard with, and which eye have you seen with that I am going to mix around with Lu Xianming? You can't be that self-opinionated. Ling Han shook his head. He was really worried about the IQ of this person. And he wanted to contest for the position of chairperson like this? Oh, right. Ling Han's own aim was also to become the chairperson of Alchemy City, or at least an heir. Firstly, he could make his name known so he could reach Commander Guan, and secondly, he was fond of alchemy in the first place, and was of a mind to develop himself here. Going by that logic, whether it was this Can or Lu Xianming, they were actually all his competitors. Ling Han scratched his head. Previously, he had not taken this problem into consideration. As the Alchemy Emperor, he was too confident in himself in the area of alchemy. With all others being mediocre, there really were none that he took seriously. Thus, he had never taken Lu Xianming and the other 9 holy sons and holy daughters to heart and considered them his rivals. It was just like when the Lion King ascended the throne, would he have to be concerned about a few lambs that he had passed on his way? Ling Han broke into a grin. Since Can was also a competitor, then there was no harm in playing around with him, and striking a blow to his pride. Then what do you suggest? He asked. Can instantly bore an expression of pride. See, he only had to reveal his trump card slightly, and this brat had cowered as expected. Just playing up to those in power. This was also his twisted logic. If you did not listen to me, then you had forgotten yourself in your conceit. If you listened, you were merely playing up to those in power. In any case, it was still he who was in a lofty position, and everything was up to him to decide. I will give you 2 choices. The first is an inferior plan, and that is to leave Lu Xianming, and get out of Alchemy City. The second is a superior option, and that is to come under my banner, and I will take you to the pinnacle of your life. Ling Han almost spluttered in laughter. Why don't you just go ahead and say that you will allow me to show off and fly? He shook his head, and said, I choose the third option. What third option? There was no third option. Can's expression cooled, and he said, you want to add on a condition? Fine then, go ahead and say it. Ling Han smiled, and said, I'll be the boss, and you holy sons and holy daughters should all come and bow down to me. By the look of things now, this was a joke, but only Ling Han was filled with confidence. In future, he was to become the king of Alchemy City. Then, whether it was Can, Lu Xianming, or the other holy sons and holy daughters, they would all have to bow down to him as their master. Ha ha ha. Can laughed quickly in derision. This time, he had really been angered. A mere severing mundane tear. So what if you were even more of a prodigy? This was Alchemy City. Ling Han ascended the steps, and said, "Step aside." At first, Ken wanted to make a move, but thinking of Ling Han's terrifying strength, the hand that he had raised slightly immediately lowered. If he did make a move, he would only be asking for his own humiliation. Furthermore, he would be shamed if he, a noble holy son, was to be beaten. He humphed, and followed Ling Han with a wave of his sleeve. "Ling Han, then I'll just let you see what kind of power the holy son of Alchemy City has. You want to buy alchemical pills? Hee, without my agreement, just see who would dare sell anything to you." He deserved to be a holy son even with such narrow-mindedness. Ling Han shook his head internally. In comparison, Lu Xianming was indeed considerably stronger. It was no wonder he was the most popular. However, his intention was not to buy alchemical pills in the first place. If you continue to think so highly of yourself, aren't you afraid that you would fly into rage out of humiliation later? Speaking of rage out of humiliation, Ling Han involuntarily smiled. Then, he'd just play around with this guy. Chapter 1879, Causing Trouble. Not only was the Alchemist Pavilion the place to authenticate alchemists and alchemist trainees, it was also the largest pharmacy of every level that sold alchemical pills. How could Ken possibly think that Ling Han was here to take the test for alchemists? In his eyes, he had to have come to buy celestial pills. As a holy son, Ken had special privileges. If he couldn't even decide who could buy the alchemical pills, this title would really be too useless. Ling Han ignored him, and continued on ahead, his speed very fast. Ken hurriedly set off in pursuit with large strides. As he saw it, Ling Han wanted to throw him off his tail, and then go to purchase alchemical pills. Tui, in his dreams. Behind him, 4 guards appeared and followed closely behind. The distance of a few hundred meters was nothing to a severing mundane tier. Though there were protective formations here, which largely restricted the speed of traveling, that was only a few breaths' time. Ling Han thus entered into the great pavilion. The first floor of this great pavilion sold alchemical pills. Multiple pill drawers were lined up, and there was no end in sight. Furthermore, they were rows upon rows, and their exact number was unknown. Even in a celestial king tier level force, it was still mortals below severing mundane tier that were the majority, and Alchemy City was naturally no exception either. Thus, the majority of alchemical pills here were sold to mortals, and the largest number was targeted at immortal level. There were also very few that were meant for the shattering void tier and below. That was because citizens of the celestial realm were born powerful. The majority was already in the shattering void tier by birth, so would there still be any need for alchemical pills for spiritual ocean tier or heaven tier? Ling Han began to walk around. A celestial had a limitless lifespan, at least it was fine to waste 1 or 2 days' time. Ken followed him all the way, and wherever they went, the attendants behind the pill cabinets would pay their respects to him. A holy son was high and noble. A hint of pride appeared on Can's face. The previous blow that had wounded his confidence was currently recovering. "See, that is how awesome and amazing I am." Ling Han deliberately stopped, and asked for the pricing of the alchemical pills. Ken stood behind him, and directly said, "No sale." The attendant showed a troubled expression. What logic was there to pushing customers out the door in a business? But this holy son had already spoken, and no matter how brave he was, he did not dare go against his will. "Customer, many apologies. This pill is not for sale," he said with slight anxiety, fearing that he would lose his job, but what he feared more was that Ling Han would hold a grudge against him. After all, he was only in the heavenly body tier. Ling Han chucked, and continued on walking ahead. Whatever pill that he stopped to ask about the price of, the vendors all directly told him it was not for sale under Can's overbearing pressure. After walking around for a good while, Ling Han indeed could not possibly purchase a single alchemical pill. How about it? Do you now know the consequences of going against my will? Ken asked proudly, and then his tone turned cold. Furthermore, though Alchemy City forbids murder, do you know that some people could possibly disappear inexplicably? I heard you have 2 beautiful wives too. TSK. You can't be hoping to make them into widows, right? Women are really too unreliable. Possibly not even grass has sprouted on your grave, and they are already playing coy in the arms of another man. These words were very malicious and filled with threat. Instantly, Ling Han's expression darkened. If you want to play around, I'll play with you, but you actually direct the spearhead at my wives. Ling Han could not tolerate that. Who do you think you are? Ling Han turned around abruptly. He grabbed Kan's collar and picked him up. Though the latter was a peak stage 4th Severance King tier, in front of Ling Han, he couldn't even fight back in the slightest. This was completely one-sided suppression. If you are so determined to seek death, fine, I'll oblige you. Ling Han patted Kan's face with his palm. Just hold on. If I don't kill you, then my name isn't Ling Han. Very quickly, he released his hold. This was the Alchemist Pavilion, and if he made a move on an alchemist, especially one that was a holy son, that would be too unwise. Kan still shivered in fear. That previous look in Ling Han's eyes possessed a very frightening aura, causing his heart to feel lingering fear. Even now, he had not regained his composure, but he immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. In Alchemy City, in the Alchemist Pavilion, Ling Han actually dared to threaten him. This was his territory. How dare you? He was so furious it felt like his chest was close to bursting. However, while Ling Han had indeed picked him up just now, he did not make any further more, so he could not flare up. Firstly, it would make him seem too narrow-minded, and secondly, Ling Han's reputation was not weak at all in recent times. If he could not take hold of Ling Han's weakness, and use it to compel him to join him, then he definitely would be targeted by Lu Xianming, and pay an exorbitant price. His face was livid. Do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Kan quickly set off after him. He had already made up his mind. Today, he would not let Ling Han buy a single alchemical pill, even if it was the very lowest grade of alchemical pill. And after today, he would send out assassins to get rid of Ling Han. Just like he had said, in Alchemy City, some people could possibly disappear for no reason. As long as no bodies were discovered, who could say for sure that they had died? Ling Han walked to the end of this great pavilion, and was immediately halted. Visitors stop here. From the 2nd floor onwards, it is not open to visitors. A guard immediately lowered the long spear in his hands, blocking Ling Han's way forwards. Kan crossed his arms over his chest behind him, watching coldly. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I want to undergo the test for alchemists. Pooh! Immediately, Kan spluttered, the expression on his face indescribably strange. You want to take the test for alchemists? You have got to be joking, right? You are just a prodigy of martial arts. Could it be that you think that you are an all-round prodigy? The guard faltered slightly. Going by the rules of Alchemist Pavilion, this was indeed allowed. He said, then, please wait. Allow me to make a report. He had a sound transmission stone, which could allow for instant communication across a short distance. Of course, this short distance was referring to the whole space of the 4th level of Alchemy City. After a while, a young man that looked like an alchemy apprentice walked out through the passage. When he saw Ling Han, he calmly asked, so you are the one that would like to be authenticated as an alchemist? That's right. Ling Han nodded. Lord Holy Sun. This alchemy apprentice had just discovered Kan's presence, and quickly paid his respects. Ken waved him off dismissively, indicating that the other needed not have any reservations. This alchemy apprentice thought that Ling Han was deliberately brought over by Ken, and the prideful expression on his face immediately disappeared. He cordially said to Ling Han, "Are you already a high-grade trainee now?" "No." Ling Han shook his head. "Then, a middle-grade trainee?" "No." "Beginner trainee?" "No." After asking for 3 times consecutively, and getting 3 negative answers in a row, the alchemy apprentice couldn't help but grit his teeth. "Then where did you get the pride to actually declare that you want to take the test for alchemists?" "According to the rules, the test must begin from the lowest grade of trainee. Only high-grade trainees can test for the status of alchemist," this alchemy apprentice said carefully, fearing that he would anger Kansas. "Fine." Ling Han nodded. It was only a matter that would take more twists and turn simple enough. Ken merely smirked coldly by the side, but did not correct him. He wanted to have Ling Han be praised here, praised so much to a lofty position, and then he would kick him off the pedestal with a single move so that he would be completely shamed. The alchemy apprentice led Ling Han to the 2nd floor, and then began the procedure for testing. Because the first step was only becoming a beginner trainee, there was only a middle-grade trainee as witness. "Greetings, Lord Holy Sun." That middle-grade trainee hurriedly paid his greetings when he saw Kansas. He immediately understood. Ling Han had to have a powerful background as he was qualified to have Ken accompany him. Even if he was as stupid as a pig, he would be lenient, and allow him to pass. After all, it was only a beginner trainee. There would not be any investigations done. "Have him concoct the green rainbow pill," Ken suddenly spoke up. "Ah." That middle-grade trainee was instantly shocked. That was because the green rainbow pill was the hardest to concoct among beginner-grade alchemical pills. In fact, it could be compared to middle-grade alchemical pills. Chapter 1880, Alchemist Test. "Hadn't you come here to show support?" The middle-grade trainee couldn't understand. Why had he now come around to demand that Ling Han concoct the alchemical pill of the highest level of difficulty? But now that the Lord Holy Sun had spoken, did he dare raise any doubt? He did not even dare to ask the reason, and directly said to Ling Han, "Then you just concoct the green rainbow pill." Who knows, it may be that he is specialized in concocting this one. Ling Han nodded indifferently. They came to an alchemy chamber. Ling Han gave his name, and then entered, beginning his path of ascension in alchemy in the celestial realm. Ken sneered. He wanted to show Ling Han that with his help, it would not be any difficult matter for him to get the position of a low-grade alchemy trainee, or even the highest-grade alchemy trainee, but if he was angered? Humph. In the alchemy chamber, Ling Han had already begun. He started from separately picking out the medicinal ingredients, extracting essence, opening the cauldron, and starting the fire, all done smoothly. Amazing. The middle-grade trainee couldn't help but praise. One would know with just a comparison. He at least was inferior to Ling Han in these techniques. They were pleasing to see. This was practically a feast for the eyes. Ken was also shocked. As it turned out, Ling Han really knew how to concoct alchemical pills. At first, he had thought Ling Han had just been infuriated by his actions, and had thus blurted out he wanted to take the alchemist test, but it seemed like that was not the case. Hiss, could it be that he had not come to buy alchemical pills from the start? True, Lu Xianming should have a very high opinion of this guy. Then, no matter what alchemical pills Ling Han wanted, Lu Xianming would be able to provide them for him. What need was there for Ling Han to personally come to this place? But there was no perfect being in this world. Everyone had limited energy. Furthermore, Ling Han was far from reaching the pinnacle of cultivation, so how could he possibly have additional time to spend on alchemy? How had he gained all these abilities? An all-round prodigy? I don't believe it. However, whether Can believed it or not, in any case, Ling Han had already entered into a brilliant state. Only after less than half a day, a cauldron of green rainbow pills was successfully concocted. They naturally were of the highest grade. Passed. The middle-grade trainee's expression was filled with admiration. It was no wonder that this person could be personally accompanied by Kansas. No wonder he could concoct the green rainbow pills which were of the highest difficulty level. He did indeed have that ability. Kan's expression was incredibly dark. This was practically a slap to his face. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Next, I wish to continue testing for a middle-grade trainee." The middle-grade trainee was not qualified to hold the position of witness further. He immediately went off to make a report, and then 3 high-grade trainees came. "Greetings, Holy Son." They first paid their respects to Kansas. Kan waved them off. At present, he, too, was slightly curious where Ling Han's limits were. "Then concoct the Heaven and Earth Unity Pill," he spoke up. The 3 high-grade trainees froze at the same time. The Heaven and Earth Unity Pill had belonged to the category of high-grade alchemical pills a very, very long time ago. However, afterwards, due to certain reasons, it was again categorized as a middle-grade alchemical pill, but this was enough proof of the difficulty level of this alchemical pill. Ling Han was testing for a middle-grade trainee, and you directly demanded that he concocted what could practically be considered a high-grade alchemical pill. Wasn't this just making it difficult for him? But they did not dare to say anything. The Lord Holy Son had spoken, so who would dare draw calamity onto themselves? Thus, Ling Han began to concoct the Heaven and Earth Unity Pill. The moment he began, these 3 high-grade trainees became enchanted, deeply impressed by Ling Han's movements. This really was a rookie? He was practically a veteran alchemist with how amazingly skilled he was. Passed. After assessing Ling Han's completed pill, the 3 high-grade trainees all gave it a high grade. Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, "Let's continue with the test for a high-grade trainee." Trainees were trainees. Even if they were of the high grade, they could not possibly alert an alchemist. But the number of witnesses had increased from 3 to 10. Kan did not speak further from the sidelines. He had finally seen the facts. Ling Han indeed had great accomplishments in the area of alchemy. Forget it, what does it matter if you get authenticated as a high-grade trainee? In any case, you wouldn't be able to live for too many days more. Alchemist? What a joke. Even if a high-grade trainee wanted to ascend to this level, without over 100 million years of training, that was absolutely impossible. But looking at Ling Han's flame of life, he couldn't be over 10,000 years old, so how could that be possible? Without Kan exerting pressure from the sidelines, the difficulty level of this test naturally dropped sharply. Ling Han could simply concoct any type of high-grade alchemical pill instead of one specific type. This naturally was just a matter of course for him. The alchemy chamber also had the effects of speeding up time. After merely 1 day, a high-grade alchemical pill was completed. Passed. The 10 high-grade trainees had long since been impressed by Ling Han's skill, and showed expressions of admiration without reservations. Their heated and maddened eyes made even Ling Han feel slightly discomfortable. "I'll continue with the test for an alchemist," Ling Han hurriedly said. When these words were spoken, a dead silence fell over the area. "Test for an alchemist? Hiss, you really are so ambitious. Do you know how many alchemists are there even in Alchemy City? 138,643. Though it was over 100,000, how big was Alchemy City? This was a 4-star city, and the population numbered in the millions and millions. Furthermore, these alchemists did not all originate from Alchemy City, but comprised about half the number in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. And even then it was just slightly over 130,000. From this, it was clear how high the requirements were for becoming an alchemist. What alchemist did not work earnestly a few 100 million, billion, or tens of billions of years as a high-grade trainee? Some were still holding the title of high-grade trainee even until death. Furthermore, this was the fate of the very large majority. If that was not the case, how could alchemists possess such a high status? That which was rare was dear, and it was the same for people. From a certain aspect, alchemists were even rarer than exquisitely beautiful women. What is it? I can't. Ling Han asked smilingly. You can take the test, but you will have to concoct celestial pills, which need the use of celestial medicine, a high-grade trainee said. The pavilion does not provide any celestial medicine. You have to prepare your own. No problem, Ling Han answered. Seeing how resolute Ling Han was, Can finally showed a hint of wariness. Could Ling Han really do it? No one was an idiot. If they did not have some amount of certainty, who would come to the alchemist pavilion and fail, be embarrassed, and lose their wealth in public like this? But to say Ling Han possessed the abilities of a one-star alchemist. How could this be believed? The 10 high-grade trainees exchanged looks, and one of them said, "Fine." However, the alchemist test requires an alchemist to invigilate. They were not qualified to authenticate an alchemist. Ling Han nodded. The alchemist test would create a big commotion. Just think about it. How many alchemists were there in the whole Alchemy city? And those that could become alchemists would at least have to be in the severing mundane tier, but throughout such extended passage of time, there were actually only a total number of just over 130,000. Thus, when it was heard that someone was going to undergo the alchemist test, this naturally created a huge commotion. It was possible that this was the rise of a new star. Perhaps this someone was going to become a giant pillar in the future of Alchemy City. Who knew? To say nothing of alchemists being alerted, even a great many cultivation clans sent out representatives to observe the event. A new alchemist was worth recruiting. But when everyone found out that the person that was undergoing the alchemist test was Ling Han, they all had about the same thoughts. You have got to be joking. You are a martial arts prodigy here, the man who has defeated Zhao Qingfeng while you yourself are inferior by one minor level, and now you actually went off to concoct alchemical pills, ignoring your proper occupation? Has your head been kicked by a donkey? It is not that being an alchemist is bad, but you can't put the cart before the horse. If you have so much energy, why aren't you spending it on cultivation? Fuck. Chapter 1881, Ling Han is going to concoct celestial pills. When they found out this person was Ling Han, everyone's feelings of anticipation instantly declined by half. Professionals were in charge of different aspects. There were limits to one's energy, and this was an incredibly realistic problem. Just how many years had you been alive for? Those with strong insight could very accurately make an assessment below 500 years. Then even if you had spent your life in the time cultivation chamber that even had the highest grade of time acceleration effects ever since birth, when all was said and done, that would only be 50,000 years. Becoming a one-star alchemist in 50,000 years? You've got to be joking, you must be crazy. But no matter what, a great prodigy of martial arts actually taking the alchemist test still incited the interest of the majority, and they watched from the sidelines. Furthermore, once the news spread out, it had even drawn the attention of a good number of holy sons and holy daughters. Some were qualified to contest for the position of chairperson, such as Lu Xianming, Jiao Bang, and Qin Guyu. The other holy sons and holy daughters knew that there was no hope for them to beat the competition, and had thus long since withdrawn from worldly matters, keeping an incredibly low profile. To say who was the very most stunned, that would have to be Lu Xianming. What did Ling Han mean? This question kept turning over and over in his mind. As a prodigy of martial arts, why did he want to become an alchemist? If Ling Han really became a one-star alchemist, the significance of this would be long-lasting and powerful. A one-star alchemist that had not exceeded 50,000 years in age. This was a supreme, super genius, which was even more stunning than Ling Han having defeated Zhao Qingfeng. After all, there were many martial arts prodigies. To say nothing of those farther away, merely Yan Xianlu alone was capable of suppressing a whole generation, and becoming a supreme monarch. However, a one-star alchemist that had not exceeded 50,000 years in age was really something that hadn't even been heard of. This kind of prodigy would be fully supported by the Alchemy City. A new holy son. If he held the titles of both martial arts prodigy and alchemy prodigy, then what other holy son or holy daughter could contest with Ling Han for the position of future chairperson of Alchemy City? There was definitely no one that could match him, and he would be invincible. Lu Xianming felt as if there was thunder booming in his head. At this moment, he only had one thought: Ling Han definitely, absolutely could not succeed. Otherwise, he would be forced to stand on Ling Han's opposing side. He definitely could not possibly allow anyone to threaten his future position as chairperson. Involuntarily, he turned to look at Qin Guyu, Jiao Bang, and Kansas. Coincidentally, these three people were also looking at each other, and they could all see a signal from each other's eyes. There definitely could not be another holy son, much less a freakish prodigy like Ling Han. However, most people did not have that thought. On the contrary, some were very expectant. If Ling Han could succeed, then with his skill in both alchemy and martial arts, he would definitely become a legendary character of Alchemy City. And thus, in such complicated and anticipatory circumstances, Ling Han entered into the alchemy chamber, taking the most important step for him in Alchemy City. He was naturally going to concoct the Purple Moon Spirit Suppression Pill. Merely the time for concoction would be as long as 3 months. Thankfully, this alchemy chamber had time acceleration effects 100 times at that. Thus, if Ling Han could succeed, he would only need a single day as measured outside. In the eyes of everyone, all of Ling Han's movements had been sped up by 100 times. Hence, his movements were even smoother and faster, but even if they had been sped up by 100 times, his movements were still as smooth as water, causing everyone to feel as if they were enjoying a feast for the eyes. Exclamations of shock rang out in the surroundings. There was no lack of real alchemists here. As the saying went, laymen simply enjoyed the show, while connoisseurs recognized the artistry. Judging from Ling Han's movements, he indeed had the style of a veteran alchemist. This caused them to be incredibly shocked. Such a young alchemist's existence was really too inconceivable. It could only be said that there really were prodigies in this world, just that they all had not uncovered them previously. The expressions of Lu Xianming, Kan, and the others became gradually uglier. Ling Han had already begun pill concoction. Though this was the very most crucial step, a feeling of great foreboding already rose up in them. Who knew? This guy might really be able to succeed. They were all afraid. Though they were all holy sons and holy daughters, and in fact had reached the height of a 2-star alchemist, compared with Ling Han's accomplishments, they would pale in color. There were many alchemists that were of a higher grade than them, so why was it that they were the holy sons and holy daughters? That was because they had the potential to charge up to 3 stars, 4 stars, or even 5 stars. But if Ling Han could become a 1-star alchemist while he was less than 50,000 years old, then his potential undoubtedly surpassed all others. This was a powerful enemy. The 4 holy sons and holy daughters looked at each other, and all of them felt an intense killing intent rise up in them. Even Lu Xianming was no exception. His heart had already hardened. In the outside world, 1 day's time passed very quickly, and in the alchemy chamber, Ling Han was also about to pass 100 days' time. In his hands, alchemy had become an art, exuding a kind of beauty to it. He suddenly struck the cauldron strongly. The 9 heavens flame flickered slightly, and the cauldron instantly exploded. He failed. Everyone was watching with captivation, and when they saw that the cauldron had abruptly exploded, they were naturally very disappointed. But that was fine. Being able to hold on for so long until the cauldron exploded, Ling Han would definitely be able to become a one-star alchemist without having to try many more times. Such a young one-star alchemist, and added with the halo of being a great prodigy of martial arts. What kind of notion was this? A new star, this was definitely a super rising star, and was worth being recruited at all costs. Lu Xianming and the others also breathed out sighs of relief, but they had also become more cautious. They definitely had to get rid of Ling Han as soon as possible. Otherwise, once he had become a one-star alchemist, or even a holy son, it would really be too difficult. However, everyone's expressions changed in the next second. Though the cauldron had shattered, 3 alchemical pills were dancing in the alchemy chamber. As if they had sprouted wings, they wanted to flee. He succeeded. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was really unexpected, and the expressions of Lu Xianming and the others also became incredibly ugly in an instant. They were aware that a frightening opponent would soon emerge. Ling Han opened his palm and grabbed the 3 soaring alchemical pills. With a surge of origin power, the 3 pills obediently stayed in his palm. He pushed the doors open and stepped out, tossing the alchemical pills to an alchemist, and smilingly said, "Please examine." Shua, a great many alchemists immediately gathered around. Hiss, not only were they successfully concocted, they are also medium grade. This young man, are you people sure that he is a martial arts prodigy? I have stayed at the level of one-star alchemist for over 7 billion years, and have not concocted medium-grade celestial pills even now. I practically am an extreme idiot. All the alchemists chattered away, incredibly stunned. It was really not easy for an alchemist to emerge, what more this kind of rookie that had risen up so strongly. He was really too scary. This was practically starting from medium grade. Ling Han? An alchemy apprentice walked over. He looked to be only 15 to 16 years old, but his real age would at least have to be over millions and millions of years. The flame of life could not deceive. Seeing him walk over, everyone bore expressions of seriousness. Even those alchemists were no exception, and they all separated, giving way for him. They were not revering this alchemy apprentice, but the person he represented. Alchemist Cheng. Chapter 1882, I've hit you, but so what? I am. Ling Han smiled slightly. A little lazily, the alchemy apprentice said, "My lord would like to see you." "And who is your lord?" Ling Han asked. He did not recognize this alchemy apprentice. That alchemy apprentice showed an expression of pride, and declared, "You don't even know my lord, and you could actually still become an alchemist?" Ling Han couldn't help but feel angered. Whether I can become an alchemist or not is something that can be decided with a single word of nonsense from you? Just who do you think you are? He crossed his hands behind him, and said, Indeed, I do not know who your lord is. Furthermore, just who do you think you are that you can talk to me in this manner? In terms of martial strength, he could practically crush all other severing mundane tiers, and in terms of alchemy, he was already a one-star alchemist. As for this alchemy apprentice? His martial strength was the 3rd severance, and he was only a mere alchemy apprentice. At most, he could only be a high-grade trainee, and he thought he had the right to be arrogant in front of Ling Han? Fuck off. The alchemy apprentice couldn't help but tremble in fury. Pointing at Ling Han, he exclaimed, "How dare you, you actually dare to insult me? Can't I? You are nothing in the first place, and you dare strut around in front of me." Ling Han said carelessly. "Let me ask you this, what right do you have to be my equal?" The alchemy apprentice was rendered speechless. The fact he could be so arrogant was naturally because of alchemist Cheng, and he himself, well, he could not be said to be worth nothing, but at least there was really nothing too awesome about him either. It was primarily because he was used to being arrogant. After he had become Alchemist Zi Cheng's personal alchemy apprentice, who would not be polite towards him wherever he went. Even when Immortal Palace tier elites saw him, they would cordially call him Little Mo. Alchemists naturally were no exception. Alchemist Zi Cheng was one of the only 3 4-star alchemists of Alchemy City. Thus, even when 3-star alchemists saw him, they would also be very polite, and would always have something to ask of him. For example, if they wanted to see Alchemist Zi Cheng, they would need him to make a report. But now? A mere newly promoted 1-star alchemist at the 4th severance actually dared insult him straight to his face. This, are you planning to rebel? Ling Han, you have gone too far, the alchemy apprentice exclaimed in a high-pitched voice. If you offend me, you will not be able to move a single step in Alchemy City. Seeing this scene, everyone shook their heads. This alchemy apprentice had the surname of Mo, and was usually addressed as Alchemist Moven. If he was actually not an alchemist, everyone would still give him some face. As the trusted aide of Alchemist Zi Cheng, this alchemy apprentice Mo possessed very strong authority, and practically no one dared to offend him. Even for those like Lu Xianming, they would be very polite in front of this person. This brat was really a hot-tempered youngster. Why were you squabbling with alchemy apprentice Mo? If he said a few derogatory words about you in front of Alchemist Zi Cheng, you would be in a lot of trouble. Oh Can's anger finally dissipated somewhat. That was because he was not the only person Ling Han had driven to exploding in fury. Just see, even he did not wish to offend alchemy apprentice Mo, but Ling Han actually confronted him directly without a single bit of hesitation. Though he still hated Ling Han, he could not help but admit that he was impressed. Ling Han scoffed, and declared, "You are but a lackey. What are you calling out for? Don't forget, everything that is yours is bestowed by another." Since he could bestow, he naturally could also withdraw. You think you are qualified? Alchemy apprentice Mo exclaimed sharply. He had never been treated with such contempt before. He was determined to make Ling Han bow his head in front of him. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I will not lower myself to the level of trash. Step aside, don't block the way." Seeing Ling Han was about to leave, alchemy apprentice Mo hurriedly jumped out, raised his arm to stop his advance, and exclaimed, "You can't leave." "What is it? Want to come to blows with me?" Ling Han asked smilingly. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" In the first place, alchemy apprentice Mo treated everything as below his notice. Furthermore, he was walking the path of alchemy, so he naturally did not know much about Ling Han's situation. In his eyes, while he himself was only a 3rd severance, because he was not that skilled in alchemy, he had placed more of his concentration on martial arts. Thus, he, a 3rd severance, would not lose to a 4th severance alchemist. Pooh! A considerable number of people spluttered out in laughter. Really, one who was ignorant had nothing to fear. This was quite interesting. They heard that Ling Han was going to take the alchemist test, and were incredibly stunned. On the other hand, alchemy apprentice Mo thought that Ling Han was only a prodigy of alchemy, and when he heard Ling Han speak of coming to blows, he naturally scoffed derisively. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that there would actually be such a prodigy in this world? Alchemist Mo, you can't. Someone wanted to curry favor, and hurriedly explained Ling Han's background. My gods! Alchemy apprentice Mo's mouth suddenly twitched. Are you even still human? It's already enough that you are so powerful in martial arts and strength, but you are actually a prodigy of alchemy as well. Won't you let others live? His aura immediately weakened, but because he was used to being arrogant and overbearing, he immediately puffed up his chest again, and said, I will not come to blows with a barbarian like you. You insulting me is equivalent to insulting Alchemist Zi Cheng, and that is insulting the whole Alchemy City. Who would agree for you to be so willful here? Ling Han couldn't help but smile in spite of himself, and said, "You are really quite thick-skinned. A mere alchemy apprentice, who is only a high-grade trainee at most, a mere third severance, and you actually say that insulting you is insulting the whole alchemy city? There's no way I can actually believe that." "Humph, now you know." Alchemy apprentice Mo was a little proud. This was not the first time that he had used his powerful connection as an intimidation tactic. Even a great many king tiers had bowed their heads in front of him. Ling Han nodded, and said, "If you think you can try insulting me. So what if I insult you? For a bastard like you, I can insult you 100-inch. Pa." Alchemy apprentice Mo had not even finished his words when Ling Han had picked him up by the neck. Naturally, the former could not speak further like this. His legs were kicking around in panic, and even his face had turned green. "Everyone has heard. It was he who insulted me." Ling Han shrugged, seeming to be very innocent. "I am a one-star alchemist, and this little alchemy apprentice actually dared to insult me. You say, does he deserve to be beaten? Of course he does." He did not even wait for others to answer, and he delivered a slap. This slap carried a lot of force. Alchemy apprentice Mo directly opened his mouth, and spat out a mouthful of blood as well as a few broken teeth. One side of his face was swelling up at a visible rate. Hiss, everyone sucked in a sharp breath. As the saying went, before you hit the dog, look at the master. His master was Alchemist Zicheng, one of the top-tier characters of Alchemist Zicheng, so was he anyone you could teach a lesson to? But the problem here was that Ling Han was very much in the right. You, a mere high-grade trainee, actually dared to insult a one-star alchemist. Just what was the hierarchy worth like this? Without norms or standards, how could anything be accomplished? Pa. Ling Han delivered a series of slaps until he vented all his pent-up anger, and he finally tossed alchemy apprentice Mo casually to the side. To dare make a move like this, he naturally had his own consideration, and it was not completely because he was rash. Firstly, Alchemist Zicheng had to have a very high opinion of him, and that was why he sent someone to invite him over. Then, as long as this great alchemist was a more reasonable person, he would not just listen to Alchemy apprentice Mo's side of the story. Secondly, even if Alchemist Zicheng was deceived, weren't there still two other four-star alchemists? On one side, it was a frighteningly young alchemist prodigy, and on the other side, it was only a lackey. Whom would the two great alchemists side with, then? If the scales were still tipped in Alchemy apprentice Mo's favor with this, then there would be no more significance for Ling Han to stay here. He would not want such a decayed place, even if it was given to him. With a flutter of his sleeve, Ling Han strode off. Judging by Lu Xianming's expression, there was no possible way for him to continue staying at the latter's home, so he had best not wait for the latter to speak up, and take his leave of his own volition. Everyone looked at Ling Han's receding back, and then turned to look at Alchemy apprentice Mo, who was still moaning on the ground. They all felt an admiration rise up from the bottoms of their hearts. This brat was really awesome. Chapter 1883, Split. After returning to the Lu clan, Ling Han immediately went to call the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Just as they were about to leave, however, bewitching Maiden Ro suddenly arrived. Upon seeing the Empress, a look of apprehension instantly spread across the other seductive woman's face. She was stunningly beautiful, and she was confident that she could seduce all people in the world. However, the Empress was even more beautiful and charming than her. This was a huge blow to her self-confidence. Moreover, the Empress was extremely intimidating, and this caused bewitching Maiden Ro to feel as if she couldn't lift her head before her. However, bewitching Maiden Ro was a bewitching woman, after all, and a radiant smile immediately blossomed across her face. Oh, the three of you are truly deeply in love. Do you always stick together like this? The Empress swept her gaze across the bewitching woman, and there was a dignified and imposing expression on her breathtakingly beautiful face. Call me big sister. The bewitching woman pouted upon hearing this. After hesitating for a brief moment, she said in a soft voice, "Big sister." She appeared extremely reluctant yet helpless. This was the power of strength. Bewitching Maiden Ro was completely helpless when she came across the Empress. Ling Han couldn't help but burst into laughter. "We're about to leave the Lu clan," he said. "What trouble have you caused this time? Did you beat up some holy son from the Alchemy city?" Bewitching Maiden Ro asked with a worried expression. Ling Han was truly unparalleled when it came to causing trouble. He would cause trouble wherever he went. He had yet to fully resolve his conflict with the two Celestial King tier forces, yet he had already gone off to provoke a holy son from the Alchemy city. However, this was to be expected from Ling Han. Ling Han scratched his head upon hearing this. Did Bewitching Maiden Ro already understand him this well? "Why didn't you ask whether I've become bored of living at the Lu clan? Perhaps I'm only going out for a spin to improve my mood?" Gasp. Has my troublemaking ability already received public acknowledgement? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden covered her mouth and chuckled. It was rare to see her husband being rendered speechless. Moreover, because the Empress was present, she wasn't afraid of Bewitching Maiden Ro seducing Ling Han away. I only beat up a measly alchemy apprentice," Ling Han said with a calm expression. "Oh," Bewitching Maiden Ro breathed a sigh of relief. Although alchemists were the most venerated people in the Alchemy city, alchemy apprentices were only alchemy apprentices, after all. Thus, beating them up wouldn't be a huge deal. At most, one would simply have to pay some compensation. With Ling Han's current cultivation talent, there would definitely be countless elites willing to help him resolve any problems. However, he was Alchemist Zicheng's alchemy apprentice, Ling Han added. If it had been anyone else, they would have definitely spat a mouthful of blood upon hearing this. However, Bewitching Maiden Ro was from the Purity sect, after all, so she was most skilled in controlling her expressions. Thus, she didn't lose her composure because of this. However, the expression on her beautiful face was still quite spectacular. She was naturally aware of who Alchemist Zicheng was. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come here to participate in the competition for the Tao regulating pill. "You actually beat up Alchemist Zicheng's alchemy apprentice?" Gasp. "Why don't you ascend to the heavens?" Although Alchemy City was only a 4-star force, its status could somewhat rival that of Celestial King tier forces due to the esteemed position of alchemists. That being the case, Alchemist Zicheng could naturally be viewed as somewhat of a Celestial King as well. Ling Han had beat up the subordinate of a Celestial King, so was he not trying to ascend to the heavens? Go, go, go. We need to hurry up and leave. Bewitching Maiden Ro frantically said. Powerful cultivators like them stored everything in spatial god tools, so they could immediately leave at any time they wanted. Ling Han was slightly surprised, and he said, "This has got nothing to do with you, so why are you leaving as well? Moreover, that Lu Xianming seems to be fairly interested in you. Aren't you going to stay and become the wife of an alchemist?" One nonsense. My aspirations are grand, and my future husband definitely has to be an elite capable of ruling over an entire territory. Measly alchemists are nothing but playthings in my palm. There was a proud expression on her face, and she continued, "Men who can't conquer me aren't worthy of my attention." Ling Han was stunned upon hearing this. Which man in the world could conquer this greatly bewitching woman? He was certain that he couldn't do so. "Rest assured, I'm here to help," the Empress whispered into his ear. Perhaps others couldn't conquer Bewitching Maiden Ro, but she definitely could. A strange expression spread across Ling Han's face. From the beginning until now, the Empress had never abandoned any opportunity to capture this bewitching woman who possessed the 9 revolutions charm physique. However, it was extremely odd that she was trying to capture another beautiful woman for him as his wife herself. The 4 of them hurriedly started to leave. However, just as they exited the main gates, they saw Lu Xianming and the others returning. Sun Dong wore a smug expression of success. He had initially thought that he would need to swallow his humiliation, and he had thought that he would never be able to exact revenge. Moreover, he might even need to act respectfully before Ling Han, and do his best to please him. After all, it was clear that Lu Xianming held Ling Han in higher regard. Unexpectedly, however, Ling Han had actually gone off to complete an examination to become an alchemist or whatnot. This had directly pitted him against Lu Xianming. Afterward, he even beat up alchemist Zi Cheng's alchemy apprentice. He hadn't witnessed this scene, because he had arrived slightly later. Upon learning of it, however, he had laughed loudly after faltering for a brief moment. Ling Han was a huge troublemaker. Ling Han had beaten him up before, so now that his status had risen, was it a surprise that he had beaten up alchemist Zi Cheng's alchemy apprentice? Ling Han. Lu Xianming's expression was dark, and he said, "Where have I offended you? Why are you treating me like this?" If Ling Han had only beaten up alchemy apprentice Mo, Lu Xianming could have helped him resolve things with his status as a holy son. At most, he would only need to give up some slight benefits. However, Ling Han had directly taken the exam to become a 1-star alchemist without even consulting him. Just what kind of attitude was this? Ling Han shook his head, and said, "Brother Lu, I think you're misunderstanding something. I'm only your guest, not your subordinate. I don't need to ask for your agreement or permission to do anything. Moreover, I've only stayed at your place for a few days, so how am I mistreating you by doing this?" An expression of slight fury spread across Lu Xianming's face, and he said, "Are you intent on opposing me?" Ling Han sighed upon hearing this. Why did Lu Xianming always act as if he owed him something? In terms of owing things, Lu Xianming owed him a life. How inexplicable. Lu Xianming had truly lost himself to the title of Holy Son. Did he believe that everyone needed to sacrifice themselves for him? Who had indulged him into developing such a wild belief? "Think what you want," Ling Han said with a wave of his hand. He then calmly strode away. "Celestial Maiden Ro!" Lu Xianming shouted. "Are you truly going to follow this person? I urge you to think this through. This will bring calamity upon not only you, but perhaps even the Purity sect. Thank you for your hospitality, Holy Son Lu. However, I've already disturbed you for too long, so I won't trouble young Master Lu any longer." Bewitching Maiden Ro said without even turning around to face him. Lu Xianming's expression became even darker. He naturally understood that this was only an excuse from bewitching Maiden Ro. In reality, she was trying to draw a line between herself and him. He clenched his fists as he wallowed in this feeling of betrayal. First, it was Ling Han. He had eaten his food and lived at his place, yet he had actually gone off to take an examination to become an alchemist. His actions were as dishonorable as could be. Then it was bewitching Maiden Ro. He had already been conquered by her beauty and charm, and he had viewed her as his future wife. Now, however, she was actually leaving without any reluctance at all. This was naturally a one-sided affection on Lu Xianming's part. To say nothing of the fact that Ling Han didn't owe him, it was also preposterous to expect bewitching Maiden Ro to offer her body just because he had hosted her for 2 days. Ling Han was already tired of dealing with Lu Xianming. He waved his hand and walked away. If Lu Xianming were smart, this matter would conclude right here and now. If that were the case, everything would naturally be fine. If he were intent on causing more trouble, however, Ling Han also wouldn't hold back anymore. Bewitching Maiden Ro quickened her pace. If she had to make a choice, Ling Han was naturally far more reliable than Lu Xianming. Chapter 1884, Giving In. Holy Sun. Sun Dong called. He shuffled over, and there was venom in his eyes. Lu Xianming glared at him, and said, "Don't say anything else." He needed to calm down by himself so that he could come up with a detailed plan. "Understood," Sun Dong said before hurriedly stepping back. A wicked smile tugged at the corners of his lips. If Lu Xianming didn't help him, how could Ling Han overcome this calamity? He had beaten up Alchemist Zicheng's alchemy apprentice, so how could he resolve this issue easily? Heh! Sun Dong chuckled in his mind, and the wicked smile on his face grew even wider. He could barely stop himself from bursting into wild laughter. Elsewhere, O Kan and Qin Guyu were also engaged in a discussion with Lu Xianming's subordinates. Ling Han's sudden rise had completely ruined their plans. Perhaps Lu Xianming wasn't their combined target anymore. In fact, they might even have to team up with Lu Xianming to deal with Ling Han first. In the end, however, they decided to do nothing. After all, Ling Han had beaten up alchemy apprentice Mo. With Alchemist Zicheng's protective nature, would he let Ling Han off the hook? Since Alchemist Zicheng was inevitably going to target Ling Han, was there any need for them to waste their time and effort? Moreover, if even Alchemist Zicheng failed to deal with Ling Han, would they be able to do any better? Thus, they decided to stand back and observe the situation. Not only them, but many forces in the city also halted their attempts to recruit Ling Han. They needed to observe whether Ling Han could overcome this huge challenge. If he couldn't, their trying to recruit him would be nothing more than a waste of time and resources. It was amid such an atmosphere that Ling Han went to the Alchemist Pavilion. From the second level onward, there were no more inns in the Alchemy City. Those who could come here were either residents of the Alchemy City, or they possessed extremely unique status, and were directly hosted by the officials of this city. Thus, Ling Han had nowhere to reside even if he had money in his hands. That being the case, he could only go to the Alchemist Pavilion. He was a one-star alchemist now, so he naturally had the right to stay in the Alchemist Pavilion. No one could shoo him away. Upon seeing Ling Han arrive with numerous beautiful women, everyone in the Alchemist Pavilion wore different expressions. Ling Han still dared to come here? After overcoming their initial shock, most people turned their gazes to the Empress. Fortunately, she was wearing a veil to cover her face. Otherwise, her beauty would have definitely caused a huge commotion. Ling Han smiled before dragging some random person over, and asking, "I've heard that alchemists can reside here, am I right?" This person wore a bitter expression, and he felt as if he had been struck by great misfortune. There were so many people around, yet Ling Han had somehow grabbed him. What would he do if he was infected with Ling Han's misfortune? However, he didn't dare to ignore Ling Han's questions. After all, Ling Han was fearless, and he had even beaten up alchemy apprentice Mo. How could a measly person like him resist? "Why yes," he replied with a nod. "Very well. What procedures are there?" "I'm going to stay here," Ling Han said. The alchemy chambers here all possessed the ability to speed up time. Moreover, he didn't need to use time cultivation chambers for cultivation, so using the alchemy chambers here would save him a large amount of money. As such, he decided to refine alchemical pills here. The unfortunate man had no option but to follow Ling Han's command. He was only a beginner trainee, so he could only act subserviently before Ling Han. However, his expression was as bitter as a bitter melon. Everyone was astonished upon seeing this. Ling Han had only just beaten up alchemy apprentice Mo, yet he already dared to boldly enter the Alchemist Pavilion? Where had his courage come from? However, this made sense. If he hadn't been so wanton, would he have dared to beat up alchemy apprentice Mo? Ling Han had only just settled down when he saw Alchemy Apprentice Mo arrive. Ling Han, get the fuck over here. Ling Han walked out of his room, only to see the furious Alchemy Apprentice Mo. His expression was as if he weren't afraid of him. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and say, "What's wrong? That beating wasn't satisfying enough? Have you come for more?" Alchemy Apprentice Mo's face involuntarily flushed red. His previous encounter with Ling Han had been utter humiliation. He humphed, and said, "Wipe that smug smile off your face. I've come here at the order of Grandmaster Zicheng. I'm taking you over to accept your punishment." As expected. Everyone nodded in their minds. Alchemist Zicheng was renowned for his protective personality, and it was also because of this that Alchemy Apprentice Mo dared to act so brashly. If things could be resolved easily, how would everyone be so apprehensive of Alchemy Apprentice Mo? "Oh, so you've come on a fabricated command again?" Ling Han said. "Since this is Grandmaster Zicheng's command, why don't you show me his personally written orders?" Alchemy Apprentice Mo faltered upon hearing this. Where would he get a personally written order from? Who in the Alchemy City didn't recognize him? He was Grandmaster Zicheng's Alchemy Apprentice. As such, his words represented Grandmaster Zicheng's will. It was also because of this that he could sometimes fabricate commands to target whomever he wanted. Of course, he didn't dare to take things too far. In any case, he had indeed come here at the order of Grandmaster Zicheng. Moreover, his task was indeed to take Ling Han over. However, Grandmaster Zicheng hadn't said that he was going to punish Ling Han. Alchemy Apprentice Mo had added this in himself. In his eyes, Grandmaster Zicheng was so fond of him, so was he not calling Ling Han over to punish him? Anyhow, he genuinely didn't have a personally written order. "You actually dare to question me?" Alchemy Apprentice Mo said in anger. He was truly aggrieved this time, and this left him feeling extremely unhappy. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I'm a one-star alchemist, while you're nothing but a measly alchemy apprentice. Why can't I question you? Moreover, the level hierarchy of alchemists is extremely strict. Is a measly alchemy apprentice like you worthy of giving me commands? Who's given you such courage? By the looks of it, you're asking for another beating. You dare?" Alchemy Apprentice Mo cried in a shrill voice. However, he involuntarily stepped back as he spoke. He was truly afraid of Ling Han. In the past, who had ever dared to beat him up? Not long ago, however, he had suffered a beating at the hands of Ling Han. This was naturally fresh in his mind. Ling Han laughed, and said, "If you're not feeling guilty, why are you retreating?" "Why am I retreating? It's naturally because you're frightening me." However, Alchemy Apprentice Mo couldn't say this directly. After all, saying this would make him appear extremely weak. He straightened his neck and mustered his courage before saying, "I won't argue with a barbarian like you anymore. Grandmaster Zicheng has ordered you to immediately go over. If you ignore this command, you'll have to suffer the consequences yourself." Alchemy Apprentice Mo was using Alchemist Zicheng's name to pressure Ling Han. After all, a 4-star alchemist enjoyed the same status as a celestial king. Who dared to ignore them? However, Ling Han refused to budge, and he said, "Oh, I only know about a fabricated command. Moreover, if someone fails their task twice, I wonder what's going to happen to them." Alchemy Apprentice Mo's expression involuntarily changed. Grandmaster Zicheng was protective of him, but this didn't mean that he could truly act as he wanted. If he failed to carry out Alchemist Zicheng's orders twice in a row, Ling Han would naturally suffer a miserable fate. However, would he be any better off? He wasn't a mighty figure, and his position wasn't irreplaceable. He caught a breath before saying, "Ling Han, I'm not issuing a fake order. The Grandmaster truly commanded me to take you over." His attitude was no longer overbearing and aggressive. Right now, his priority was to trick Ling Han into entering the 5th level. Once he arrived there, he would naturally be at the mercy of Alchemist Zicheng. However, Alchemist Zicheng hadn't ordered him to forcefully capture Ling Han, so how could he dare to do so? He could reinterpret Alchemist Zicheng's words to some extent, but he definitely didn't dare to fabricate them. This was a rule that he abided by. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "A mere verbal statement is no guarantee. I don't believe you." Alchemy apprentice Mo was almost driven nuts. How was Ling Han so unreasonable? He hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth, and saying, "Then how can I convince you to follow me?" Everyone was astonished upon hearing this. It was clear that Alchemy apprentice Mo had given in. He was actually yielding to Ling Han. What a detestable person. If they treated him respectfully, he would become increasingly arrogant and wanton. However, after being beaten up by Ling Han, he had actually become so obedient? Fuck. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.